With eyes of faith, I see beyond the darkness. With eyes of faith, there's nothing more to see.
Hello there, I'm Lloyd Evans. Welcome to The Bunker. You're watching the second in a series of videos in which I'm looking at the material shown to Jehovah's Witnesses at their 2021 Powerful by Faith convention, which, as with last year's convention, is taking place virtually due to the need for social distancing. In this installment, I'll be reviewing over 3 hours of content from the Friday afternoon of the convention. Here's a sneak preview of what's in store.
Good day, brothers and sisters.
Do you own a car or a motorbike or some other type of vehicle?
Isn't prayer amazing? Can you explain it?
Let's watch a video about the stars.
Are you tired of being tired?
What would we do without forests?
Are you sick of being sick?
An interesting question.
Reject the idea that you will prepare yourselves with weapons.
Now, the dove is known as the sheep of the bird world because of its gentle appearance and disposition.
We need to be aware of whether or not it's operating correctly.
Now, wait a minute. Let's think about that.
Well, for a start, you'd try to test the one and honk it.
It seems that most literal snakes would rather flee than attack.
Have you ever stood on the ocean shore, enjoying the salt spray, watching the breakers dash against the rocks, or run up onto the sandy beach and then withdraw?
Think about what the decomposition and recycling of organic matter means for us and our future.
You find a whole lot of poisonous spiders. Well, that's not good, is it?
When we're attacked during the Great Tribulation by God's enemies, no matter how powerful or threatening they may seem, they can't possibly survive Jehovah's anger.
And we could take that promise to the bank.
If you were to check a horn, what would you be looking for, or perhaps more importantly, listening to?
We see the awesome wonder. But do we hear the thunder?
Now, if no sound comes out, you know you have a problem.
Friends, observe the stars.
And of course, you'd be interested if there's any strange sounds or noises.
The ocean can act like a powerful giant that sometimes goes on a rampage.
If you start to hear strange grinding noises, that is never a good sign, is it?
What's the takeaway? What's the lesson? What's the takeaway? What's the lesson? Well, now, what's the takeaway? What's the lesson for us?
You want all of those poisonous spiders out of the car.
Amazing. Will you ever look at a forest in the same way again?
Yes, Jehovah will use water. He may use hailstones of undisclosed size to destroy those wicked humans.
So we're encouraged to conceal ourselves if we sense danger.
If you find there's very little resistance and you have to start pumping it, again, that's a problem.
Now, can you imagine if you had the assignment to feed just one blue whale?
I know, I can think of a couple of things that I really can't eat, and I hate them.
And one day, Jehovah will shut that lion's mouth permanently.
Come on, really? I'm 180 tons, and you're gonna feed me with a little crustacean?
That's larger than this ball.
Don't harbor retaliatory thoughts.
Couldn't we have just worked out that I eat a couple big tuna every day? But the bottom line is, we are infected with sin.
Your generous donations make this possible. Donations can be made online at donate.jw.org.
So just to be clear, the clips you've just seen were obviously jumbled up and presented without context, just for a bit of fun, whereas what's to follow will be more serious, in-depth, and very much in context. But due to time constraints, I won't be able to cover absolutely everything we've just seen. Instead, I'll be singling out all the key moments from this convention session as succinctly as possible, according to what I find interesting and relevant. In fact, I've whittled down 3¼ hours of footage to 1 hour, 7 minutes of material that's worth commenting on. Anyway, if the eye-watering runtime on this video is any indication, we'd best get a move on. So without further ado, let's roll the first clip.
In each of the parts of this symposium, the speaker will help us to see not only the wonder of creation, but also the thunder of creation. We will hear Jehovah's words like thunder, loud and clear.
So, as you've seen, we're kicking off the Friday afternoon session with Ken Flodine, who is a helper to the governing body teaching committee. He has the opening part in a symposium that's seemingly intended to remind Jehovah's Witnesses of how true their faith is based on creation, based on the natural world. Apparently, the more we look at the natural world, the more we're reminded of how true the Jehovah's Witness religion is. Or at least that's the premise of this symposium. This first part is titled Use Creation to Build Your Faith, Stars. And we open with a cringeworthy example of Ken Flodine's teaching ability. I mean, what was that? Apparently we're at the point where spiritual food is so watered down and simplistic that the speakers are resorting to finding words that rhyme as a memory aid. We're not just interested in looking at the wonder of creation, we're interested in looking at the thunder of creation.
The speaker will help us to see not only the wonder of creation, but also the thunder of creation.
This, by the way, is supposedly the cream of the crop when it comes to teachers in the Jehovah's Witness organization. Ken Flodine is on the teaching committee and frequently hosts JW Broadcasting episodes and fronts various other Jehovah's Witness propaganda. And this is the height of his teaching ability. Let's find words that rhyme so that my introduction can be catchy. Forgetting, of course, that his talk, like all the other convention talks, will need to be translated into the hundreds of languages that this convention is available in which the words for wonder and thunder will almost certainly not rhyme in the vast majority.
Let's watch a video about the stars. And then we will have a faith-strengthening application to our resurrection hope.
Our sun is considered an average star. Yet the energy from the sun that reaches the Earth is thousands of times the world's total energy use. With our unaided eyes, we might see about 3,000 stars on a dark night. Many in a fuzzy band, the Milky Way galaxy, where our sun is just one of perhaps 200 to 400 billion stars. Astronomers think the Milky Way galaxy is clustered together with around 100,000 large galaxies in a massive structure called a supercluster. That, together with an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, make up the known physical universe. Countless stars spread over unfathomable distances, releasing immense amounts of energy may be impossible to grasp for us, but not for Jehovah. He counts the number of the stars. He calls all of them by name. Our Lord is great and is mighty in power.
In just a 2-minute video about the stars, we see the awesome wonder. But do we hear the thunder? Do we hear the clear, undeniable application from Jehovah, our Creator?
So we've just been watching the first in a series of 2-minute videos. There will be one for each part of this symposium, which again is titled Use Creation to Build Your Faith. these 2-minute videos, which are essentially David Attenborough rip-offs. I mean, come on. They clearly chose someone with a voice as close as possible to David Attenborough, so that in people's minds they would be thinking, oh wow, this is done to a professional level. It's almost as good as the David Attenborough stuff that we watch. So anyway, these 2-minute videos will be mostly regurgitating scientific facts that you can find almost anywhere. I say mostly because they always interject, especially towards the end, something or other to do with the Bible, or they explain the natural order in a biblical religious sense, usually or always by ending with a Bible verse. And really, what does the Bible verse tell us here? Nothing much. I mean, this doesn't relay any profound scientific wisdom. He counts the number of the stars. He calls all of them by name. Our Lord is great and is mighty in power. What does that tell us about the cosmos? How does that give astronomers a head start when it comes to understanding our universe? All we've really had in the entire 2-minute video is, again, a regurgitating of facts that you can find anywhere. And isn't it interesting how creationist groups will cherry pick science when it suits them? So the makers of this video are unquestioningly accepting as fact conclusions about the vastness of space, the vastness of the cosmos, the billions of stars in our galaxy. All of these can be accepted as fact because none of them impede upon the Bible. The moment there is a scientific fact that trespasses on the Bible or contradicts what the Bible says, well, we're going to ignore that. In fact, we're going to say, in the case of evolution, that's a false teaching. We will decide for ourselves which science is good and which science is bad, depending on whether the science contradicts our beliefs.
What can we come to appreciate about Jehovah by pondering the magnitude and the magnificence of the stars? Well, in Isaiah 40:26, Jehovah says, look at the stars. He says, lift up your eyes to heaven and see. Who has created these things? The wonder. It is the one who brings out their army by number. He calls them all by name. Because of his vast dynamic energy and his awe-inspiring power, not one of them is missing. Well, in the video we saw, it estimated that there are 2 trillion galaxies in outer space, each with billions of stars. So do the math. How many names of inanimate objects does Jehovah have in his memory? How many can he possibly contain? But did you notice at the end of that verse, it says that not one of them are missing? It is said that there's a billion trillion stars. So I have to ask you, would Jehovah remember your name, your loved one's name? Not one of them is missing. Not one star goes missing to Jehovah. Well, how about our dead loved ones? Did they go missing? My favorite verses when a faithful servant of Jehovah dies are Romans 14:7-9. In verse 8 it says, if we live or if we die, we belong to Jehovah. The status with Jehovah does not change at death. That person did not go missing.
So what Ken Flodine is straying into here is, in my view, one of the most obnoxious, grotesque elements of the Jehovah's Witness religion. The way the grieving process is hijacked. The way the memory of dead loved ones is leveraged as a reason for people to either join the Jehovah's Witness religion or stick with the Jehovah's Witness religion. In other words, what they say is, do you want to see your dead loved ones again? Oh, you do you? Well, the way for you to see them again is by sticking with us. We are your one and only way of being reunited with people that you've lost, with those that you love who have died. If you become a Jehovah's Witness and stay loyal, you're going to see them in the future in the paradise. And this is the ideology. This is the sickening trickery and manipulation that Ken Flodine is appealing to here. But I wanted to pick up on what he's saying about Isaiah 40, verse 26, which featured in a recent video I made. If Tibor is gracious, a link or a thumbnail will appear here. I made a video recently about scientific inaccuracies, 40 scientific inaccuracies in the Bible, and this was one of them because Isaiah 40 verse 26 is scientifically inaccurate. As Ken Flodine read there, the verse reads, "Lift up your eyes to heaven and see who has created these things. He is the one who brings out their army by number. He calls them all by name because of his vast dynamic energy and his awe-inspiring power. Not one of them is missing." That's not true. That's not how it works. Stars do go missing. Stars do fail routinely. In fact, in the King James Version, that last sentence instead reads, "Not one faileth," not just going missing, but stars won't fail. Well, they do fail. They do die. They go supernova. And I've researched this. Stars go supernova once approximately every 50 years in the Milky Way galaxy, and every second or so in the universe. So all the time, essentially, stars are failing, stars are going missing. It would have been, wouldn't it, quite an interesting, puzzling thing if the Bible writers had known about this, if they'd have been ahead of the curve and could have included in the Bible some mention of the fact that stars die. But the Bible writers got it wrong because they were just people and they weren't writing under inspiration. If you're the creator of the universe and you're inspiring a Bible, you're inspiring a document that's supposed to convey your will to mankind, how would you allow this to slip by? How would you allow mistakes like this to be included unless you just weren't involved at all? It makes total sense in the context of an ancient document that was written by people who were either uneducated according to the time or were scientifically illiterate because they were living at an age before many of the scientific discoveries that we take for granted. But bottom line, they got it wrong. Stars do go missing. And what's interesting is Ken Flodine is going to try to cover this up. He's going to try to explain away this and offer some apologetics. He already hints at where he's going when he says,
"So I have to ask you, would Jehovah remember your name, your loved one's name? Not one of them is missing. Not one star goes missing to Jehovah?"
Not one star goes missing to Jehovah. So stars do go missing, stars do fail, but they don't apparently go missing to Jehovah. So it's not about what's happening in the physical universe, it's about what's happening in Jehovah's mind. He's going to explain this more as we proceed.
When a star burns out, it does not go missing to Jehovah. No doubt he remembers its name, but he is not motivated to resurrect that star back to light so that it can again twinkle in a dark night sky. But what about humans? We were created in the image of Jehovah God and his Son Christ Jesus. Job 14:13. Job says, "Oh, that in the grave you would conceal me, that you would hide me until your anger passes by. that you would set a time limit for me and remember me. And in verse 14, it's obviously talking about the resurrection. But would Job, in effect, just become a burned-out star? No. Unlike a burned-out star, Jehovah yearns, he longs to call back each human to life so that we can again see that star-like twinkle in their eyes. And now, verse 15. You, that's Jehovah, will call, and I will answer you. You see, from the grave, I will answer you. You will long for the work of your hands. Well, Jehovah has the memory to bring back people. He has the power to bring back people. And he has the longing to bring back people to life. Friends, observe the stars. Have faith that you will see your resurrected loved ones.
I don't know about observing the stars. What I am observing is an appalling talk by an incredibly inadequate speaker. I mean, what is he going on about? The man's teaching skills, for someone who occupies, again, such a prominent role when it comes to teaching in the organization, the man's teaching skills are all over the place. I mean, what was that nonsense about resurrection?
He longs to call back each human to life so that we can again see that star-like twinkle in their eyes.
So corny and cringeworthy, and again, all about death, all about grief and bereavement and pain that people are feeling about their loved ones. And he's spewing this nonsense about people's eyes twinkling like stars, all towards reinforcing this idea that the only path people have to being reunited with people who have died is through his organization, through the organization he's representing. You want to see your loved ones again? Be a Jehovah's Witness. Don't just be a Jehovah's Witness, but stay faithful. Let your life be micromanaged by this organization and do everything we tell you. And then maybe you'll get to see your dead loved one again. It really is grotesque, but let's go back to these awful apologetics. We've established, haven't we, hopefully beyond any doubt, that Isaiah 40 verse 26 is a clear example of the Bible getting it wrong about science. The Bible says not one star goes missing. Science says, actually, it's about 1 every 50 years in the Milky Way, 1 every second in the universe. Stars go supernova and they cease to exist as stars. They turn into nebulas or whatever. So the Bible gets it wrong, even though it's supposedly been written by an intelligent designer who made stars and should know about these things.
When a star burns out, it does not go missing to Jehovah. No doubt he remembers its name, but he is not motivated to resurrect that star back to light.
It's not about whether it goes missing or not in a literal sense. It's about whether Jehovah remembers it. And all of these stars that are going supernova every second in the universe, Jehovah's remembering them all. And if he wanted to, he could resurrect the stars. But he doesn't, because they're inanimate objects. So therefore, the stars aren't going missing. The stars aren't failing. I ask you, viewers, does that make any sense at all? Does that wash with you as an explanation for Isaiah 40:26 getting it wrong on stars? I would argue strongly, not remotely.
Have you ever stood on the ocean shore, enjoying the salt spray, watching the breakers dash against the rocks, or run up onto the sandy beach and then withdraw? Many enjoy spending hours at the ocean. We never stop marveling at its beauty and its immense size. On the other hand, many fear the destructive power of the ocean. Like other natural forces, the ocean can act like a powerful giant that sometimes goes on a rampage. What can man do to stop the wall of water of a tsunami from approaching the coastline? In Jeremiah 5:22, notice how Jehovah reminds his people of his power. Jeremiah 5:22. Do you not fear me, declares Jehovah? Should you not tremble before me? It is I who place the sand as the boundary for the sea, a permanent regulation that it cannot pass over. Although its waves toss, they cannot prevail. Although they roar, they still cannot pass beyond it. Yes, Almighty God placed the sand as the boundary for the sea. So when its furious waves pound against sand, the sand absorbs their impact and the force vanishes. Since Jehovah controls the literal roaring sea from going beyond its boundaries, can he not also protect his people when the wicked sea of humanity threatens us with its violent storms?
This was chillingly stupid. So we have here Patrick LaFranca, another governing body helper on the personnel committee. He's giving the next part in the Use Creation to Build Your Faith symposium. His talk, as we've heard, is dealing with oceans. And wow, where do we even begin? It's interesting that in the previous item, Ken Flodine identified a verse in the Bible that is unscientific and tried to come up with a half-baked explanation for it, and in my view, failed miserably. Patrick LaFranca also uses a verse that featured in my 40 Scientific Inaccuracies video and seemingly completely misses or ignores the fact that this is a problematic verse. We heard him at the beginning there acknowledge the fact that tsunamis are a thing.
What can man do to stop the wall of water of a tsunami from approaching the coastline?
I'm sure many of you watching don't need me to tell you how powerful tsunamis are. In living memory, we've had the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. We also had the 2011 Japanese tsunami, which led to the Fukushima disaster. In both instances, we saw the footage, didn't we? We saw what happens when there is a tsunami. The ocean very clearly moves beyond its boundaries. And yet Patrick LaFranca is here appealing to Jeremiah 5, verse 22, which again I featured in my Scientific Inaccuracies video, precisely due to the fact that it gets it wrong when it comes to tsunamis. Again, what does the verse say? It is I who place the sand as the boundary for the sea, a permanent regulation that it cannot pass over. Although its waves toss, they cannot prevail. Although they roar, they still cannot pass beyond it. Unmistakably, what's going on in the mind of the writer of Jeremiah 5, verse 22, is some notion that the sand is some kind of sea defense that has been positioned strategically by God to stop the sea from encroaching on the land. And that is even in the 21st century how Patrick LaFranca seems to understand it.
Yes, Almighty God placed the sand as the boundary for the sea. So when its furious waves pound against sand, the sand absorbs their impact and the force vanishes.
So let me get this straight, Patrick LaFranca. You're seriously suggesting that when God was making planet Earth, he decided in advance where all the seas and oceans were going to be. Bear in mind that when you read the Genesis narrative, apparently the earth starts off as being all water. So the water was apparently there to begin with. But anyway, God positions the sand as a sea defense. That's what the sand's there for. It's not like the sand formed there as part of a process that's taken millions of years with large rocks being ground down into smaller rocks and then into tiny, tiny particles, and these particles moving around in the ocean and gradually getting deposited on beaches. No, that's not how it happened. Jehovah decided where the land would be, and he strategically positioned in some parts but not others, because quite clearly not all of the coastline is sand, but in some parts but not others, he put the sand as a protective measure so that the waves wouldn't encroach on the land, even though we know that that's not how it works, and even though in living memory we can think of examples of where tsunamis have breached this somehow impenetrable sea defense so that the waves have gone past the sand completely and taken lives. So not only is Jeremiah 5 verse 22 wrong in suggesting that rather than being a gradual build-up of mineral deposits, sandy beaches were strategically placed as a sea defense, not only is Jeremiah 5 verse 22 wrong on that count, it's also wrong in suggesting that the sand can stop the sea when there's a tsunami. Again, in living memory, in Patrick Lefranca's memory, there are examples of where this didn't happen. So again, it's a scientifically inaccurate Bible verse that's being appealed to here, almost as though it's something that we should be proud of or Jehovah's Witnesses should be proud of. No, this is one of those verses that you bury, that you pretend isn't there if you want to promote the Bible as being the authentic word of an all-knowing God who created all things. You bury this as deep as you possibly can and pretend it isn't there, and you find something else to talk about. But because Patrick Lefranca is apparently a bit dim, he thinks this is a verse to be proud of.
Can we trust that Jehovah in the future will bring the ocean and other natural forces into perfect balance? In the following video, note how the oceans give loud and clear evidence of Jehovah's wisdom and power.
Millions of cubic meters of water circulates continually around our planet. Near the poles, water that is colder, saltier, and denser sinks, creating a flow almost 100 times that of the Amazon River. This drives a massive circulation of water that may take 1,000 years to complete. The global ocean conveyor belt. This enormous system distributes heat, which helps to stabilize the weather, and transports great quantities of nutrients around the world, so that life may flourish in abundance. Jehovah set these mechanisms in motion and understands them perfectly. You rule over the raging of the sea. When its waves surge, you calm them.
As we saw in our video, the oceans are essential to sustain life on the earth. Sadly, however, greedy men have trashed them with pollution. Global warming has caused ocean levels to rise, threatening coastal areas. Experts are concerned that the natural forces are so out of balance that soon the planet will no longer sustain life. Yet, friends, if Jehovah had the wisdom and power to create the earth's oceans, when his time comes to bring all natural forces back into perfect balance, he can certainly cause us to live in harmony with them.
So we're still in Patrick Lefranca's talk about the oceans. Use creation to build your faith. Oceans. We've had the 2-minute budget David Attenborough video reciting facts about the ocean that you can find anywhere that have not been researched exclusively for your education by Jehovah's Witnesses. No, they are taking this information from people who've devoted their lives to studying the ocean and understanding how it works. And they're again cherry-picking the science that suits them and ignoring any science that doesn't agree with their narrative. We have a Bible verse shown on our screens. You rule over the raging of the sea. When its waves surge, you calm them. Well, how can that be true? I mean, what that seems to be suggesting is that God makes the waves stop surging. Well, he doesn't do a very good job, does he? Because if he's calming them, how come they are constantly surging? In fact, I'm pretty sure that at any given moment, somewhere on the planet, the waves are surging. So it's basically one big game of whack-a-mole, isn't it? That God's apparently playing in calming the waves. No, I don't think that's how it works. I don't think that God is seeing a wave and thinking, that's irregular, that's dangerous, I'm going to smooth that down so that the sea is flat like a mill pond. No, not how it works. It's not the most egregious example of the Bible being scientifically inaccurate, but we can certainly say that that doesn't describe the natural order. At best, there is no way of proving that God is seeing waves and saying, I'm going to calm this situation down. But what most disturbs me about what we've just been hearing is the apparent denialism when it comes to climate change. And this will be a recurring theme throughout this symposium. Multiple speakers will try and play down this idea that climate change is something that we all need to take ownership over. We all need to do something about it. We all need to be concerned about it. Each in turn, the convention speakers will give people reasons to essentially ignore it. They will essentially say, yes, it's a problem, but fortunately, it's not our problem because God's going to step in and sort everything out, which is essentially what Patrick Lefranca just said.
Experts are concerned that the natural forces are so out of balance that soon the planet will no longer sustain life. Yet, friends, if Jehovah had the wisdom and power to create the earth's oceans, when his time comes to bring all natural forces back into perfect balance, he can certainly cause us to live in harmony with them.
You've got to ask, given the urgency of climate change, given its potential to render our planet uninhabitable to humans, how is this sort of rhetoric helpful? Rhetoric that amounts to wish thinking and denialism.
In recent years, disastrous storms are becoming more frequent and severe. What used to be considered extreme, massive floods, killer droughts, and monster snowstorms, is the new normal. Many experts now put the blame on human activity that has affected the oceans and the climate. So yes, men continue to ruin the earth today, but here's the good news. During the millennium, by means of his kingdom, our wise Creator will undo all the damage done by humans. Everything will function in harmony with Jehovah's principles, and we will learn how to properly care for this beautiful planet. And as we do, everything will be brought back into proper balance, including the climate and the oceans. While some men today fear that the earth will be destroyed due to man's abuse, Jehovah gives us this comforting promise at Psalm 104 and verse 5. Psalm 104 and verse 5. He has established the earth on its foundations. It will not be moved from its place forever and ever. Yes, the beautiful, deep, and dark blue ocean will roll on forever. The Creator will make sure of that. By our observing the oceans, meditating on what we see, we can build our faith that soon we will enjoy Jehovah's creation forever without fear.
More denialism, more wish thinking, more rhetoric that essentially tells people nothing to see here, folks, nothing for you to worry about, because don't worry, Jehovah's going to swoop to the rescue, and any damage that's being done to our planet will be fixed or reversed. There's nothing that we need to do in the here and now. We don't need to worry. We don't have any ownership over this problem. It's not our problem to deal with. Jehovah is going to fix everything. How is this helpful? How is it helpful for 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses to stop caring about what they can personally do to fix our planet? That's a big chunk of people who are no longer thinking about this as something where they can personally take action. They can personally do something to help reduce the harm to our planet. I also find it fascinating that we have in this Friday afternoon of the convention now a third verse that was included, I think, in my scientific inaccuracies video, thumbnail here, if Tibor is gracious. I included this point about the earth having foundations.
Jehovah gives us this comforting promise at Psalm 104 and verse 5. Psalm 104 and verse 5. He has established the earth on its foundations. It will not be moved from its place forever and ever.
He has established the earth on its foundations. No, he hasn't. The earth doesn't sit on foundations. It doesn't have pillars. It doesn't have corners. Interestingly, as I pointed out in my scientific inaccuracies video, the writers of the Bible even seem to think that the sky had pillars and is somehow solid. They had all sorts of strange views, the Bible writers. They seem to think that if you could go down deep enough into the earth, the verse will be on the screen, I think it's in Job, that you could encounter the gates of death. So they had this really twisted idea of what was going on beneath the earth's crust, and apparently thought that there were pillars or foundations holding up the earth. Again, this is not a verse that you put front center as an example of how relevant the Bible is in the 21st century. In fact, this is one of a number of verses where if you're arguing for the Bible's accuracy and relevance and authenticity, you bury it as deep in the earth's foundations as possible.
What would we do without forests? Forests help to sustain our supply of fresh water. They purify the air, and forests convert carbon dioxide into life-sustaining oxygen. Yes, forests are vital to our existence. Yet scientists warn that we're in danger of losing this precious resource. This causes some people to wonder whether God cares about what's happening to the forest. We may even ask, will the loss of forest affect God's ability to fulfill His promise to make the earth a paradise? The simple answer to that question is absolutely not. Jehovah has everything under control. Please watch the following video. It will strengthen your faith in the designer of the forest.
Trees can grow very strong and withstand powerful forces. But if they didn't decompose after they die, trees and leaves would pile up with their nutrients locked away inside. Yet they do decompose. How? Most animals cannot eat fallen wood and leaves. But fungi can. They break down the dead plant tissues, making them softer. Beetles and termites bore through the wood, exposing more surface area and spreading the fungi inside, which soften it further so that other insects can enjoy the feast. Earthworms aerate the soil and pull nutrients down where they can be used by other plants. Decomposers have been called the unsung heroes of the natural world. They recycle organic matter so that it is available to support new life. Through this process, Jehovah made it possible for us to enjoy Earth's lush beauty, generation after generation. Let the fields and everything in them rejoice. At the same time, let all the trees of the forest shout joyfully.
Amazing! Will you ever look at a forest in the same way again?
No, I won't, James Mance. That was amazing. Because you were reciting things that scientists have learned about forests, as though it's all wisdom that you can only discover as a Jehovah's Witness. So we've just been watching the first 3 minutes of the talk, the symposium item, Use Creation to Build Your Faith. Forests. This is James Mance speaking, a helper to the writing committee of the governing body. And again, what is there unique about this? All we've heard is Budget David Attenborough regurgitating facts about forests, about decomposition, that are the product of science, that are the product of scientists studying the natural order, devoting years or decades to doing so, and producing information that can then be used perversely in propaganda for a creationist cult that cherry-picks science and ignores science that goes against their narrative of the earth being created by Jehovah, of humans popping into existence 6,000 years ago in the Garden of Eden. Anything that conflicts with that view, they ignore, but they happily and readily quote from scientists if it's not impeding on their version of Bible literalism. And once again, just as in the other 2-minute videos that have been used in other parts of this symposium, a Bible verse is quoted that doesn't tell us anything. Let the fields and everything in them rejoice. At the same time, let all the trees of the forest shout out joyfully. What does that tell us? What profound scientific wisdom does this give us about the natural order? They've literally just gone through the Bible and said, never mind whether it's educational or not, let's just find a verse that says something nice about trees. We'll quote that, and then it will make it look as though the Bible supports the scientific facts that we're reeling off in our video, even though it really doesn't. It's literally just a verse that includes the words trees and forest.
Jehovah hasn't revealed all the details of how he's going to restore the earth, but we can be confident that he will fulfill his promise to make all things new. Please open your Bibles to Psalm 37, verses 10, 11, and 29. The scripture contains a promise regarding man and the earth. Psalm 37, verses 10, 11, and 29 reads, "Just a little while longer, and the wicked will be no more. You will look at where they were, and they will not be there. But the meek will possess the earth, and they will find exquisite delight in the abundance of peace. The righteous will possess the earth, and they will live forever on it. How reassuring! People who are righteous and meek will be on the earth forever, and that earth will be a paradise. But there are at least 2 requirements for Jehovah to accomplish this. He's already taken care of the first requirement. We saw proof of that in the video. Jehovah created the forest with an amazing rejuvenation system. So in spite of man's prolonged misuse of the forest, Jehovah has already put in place the mechanism to undo all the damage that man has done. Doesn't the marvelous design of the forest build your faith in Jehovah's promise of a paradise? The second requirement to make the earth a paradise is described in verse 10 of Psalm 37 that we just read. There it says, "And the wicked will be no more." Not only will Jehovah undo the damage that men have done, but he will also remove the source of the problem. Greedy men who exploit and misuse this precious resource will be gone. Therefore, we have no reason to fear that humans will continue to ruin the earth until it reaches the point of no return.
So what James Mance is giving us here is not just a repeat of the same thought-stopping, wish-thinking and denialism that we've seen in previous parts of this symposium. He's doing this in a far more sinister way. He's not just saying, don't worry about man's ruining the earth, don't worry about deforestation, about climate change, about threats to our environment. God's going to sort all of this out, so you don't have any personal ownership in this problem. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to take an active role in trying to fix our planet. God's going to fix everything. He's not just saying that. He's also saying, actually, the solution to this problem is genocide.
Not only will Jehovah undo the damage that men have done, but he will also remove the source of the problem. Greedy men who exploit and misuse this precious resource will be gone.
Well, that's interesting, because this would presumably include the governing body and everyone involved at Watchtower in the printing of disgusting doomsday fear-mongering propaganda on paper. That's what's just been described. Those who exploit and misuse this precious resource. I would suggest that printing cult propaganda that's manipulative, that lies to people, that serves to break apart families, that's a very profound way of exploiting and misusing the natural resource of our forests. But that point aside, what we're again seeing here is James Mance saying, don't worry, everyone who is involved in misusing the natural resource of our forests, God's going to destroy them. He's going to annihilate everybody that isn't a Jehovah's Witness and who therefore must be in on this. They must be involved in some way in misusing the forests or abusing the natural order in some way. I mean, why wouldn't you do that if you're not one of Jehovah's Witnesses? You're going to be part of the problem. Good news, Jehovah is going to wipe out and obliterate all non-Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's going to save our forests.
When we think of events that will soon happen, such as the Great Tribulation and Armageddon, wouldn't you agree that we need to build our faith now? In fact, if you turn with me to Ezekiel chapter 38, and you may want to put a marker there, verses 14 and 15 describe the time when God's people will experience an all-out assault by those determined to destroy pure worship. Verse 14 mentions that Gog, or as we know, a coalition of nations, will come against God's people. And though verse 18 states that on that day, Jehovah's great rage will flare up against his enemies, the question is, will you and I remain confident in Jehovah's promise to rescue his people?
So we're still in the symposium, Use Creation to Build Your Faith. This is Leonard Myers, who is a helper to the writing committee. He's taking us through his part, which is titled Wind and water, and you have yet more doomsday reminders. If you remember, in the Friday morning of the convention, within 25 minutes, there was a reminder about Armageddon from governing body member Jeffrey Jackson. And here we have another one from Leonard Myers.
When we think of events that will soon happen, such as the Great Tribulation and Armageddon, wouldn't you agree that we need to build our faith now?
Events that will soon happen. Well, gosh, thanks for being so specific there. Soon. Yes, they're going to happen soon, just as they've been happening soon over decades of the organization's literature. Leonard Myers is sticking his neck out here and suggesting that this event that Jehovah's Witnesses have been looking forward to throughout their, 140-year history. Oh, it's soon now. It wasn't soon then, but it's soon now. And the utility of these doomsday reminders becomes crystal clear when Leonard Myers really ramps up the fear-mongering and reminds Jehovah's Witnesses of how hated they are and how they will be besieged by Gog of Magog.
God's people will experience an all-out assault by those determined to destroy pure worship. Verse 14 mentions that Gog, or as we know, a coalition of nations, will come against God's people. And though verse 18 states that on that day, Jehovah's great rage will flare up against his enemies.
As I've repeatedly argued, and I'm sorry that I repeat myself, viewers, I don't like repeating myself. It's just that we keep hearing the same rhetoric over and over again. So I have to repeat my criticisms. What does it say about this organization? If this is their way of persuading people, if these are their arguments, what does it say about an organization that needs to keep people loyal by scaring them and terrifying them and constantly reminding them that the end is coming and that a coalition of nations will soon be out to get them?
We can build our faith by considering another aspect of creation, the awesome power of wind and water. Please allow the following video to strengthen your faith.
Hail. Though it is made of ice, it is very different from snow. Hail usually forms in warm weather, when turbulent air produces thunderstorms with powerful updrafts. Those updrafts can pull a piece of dust or ice high into the cloud, where water freezes around it. Each trip up into the cloud adds a layer of ice and weight, until it becomes a hailstone that is heavy enough to fall. Hailstorms can be powerfully destructive. One deadly storm dropped hailstones weighing more than 1 kilogram each. Jehovah used hail to demonstrate his power and defend his people, such as during the 7th plague against Egypt. When Joshua fought the Amorites, Jehovah caused a great hailstorm, and more Amorites died from the hailstones than in battle. Hail is also mentioned among the elements Jehovah will use in the future against those who attack his people. Have you seen the storehouses of the hail, which I have reserved for the day of battle and war?
So yes, we have another 2-minute video intended to persuade Jehovah's Witnesses that creation, that the natural order is a basis for faith in Jehovah. We have Budget, David Attenborough, telling us all about hail, again, regurgitating facts that are known to science, that are the product of the scientific method being applied to the study of the weather and to meteorology. And they're repackaging all of this with an obvious creationist spin, because they cannot help but not just show the scripture at the end, which I'll get to, by the way, because it talks about storehouses. And I actually featured this verse in my scientific inaccuracies video. I'll get to that later because this will come up in Leonard Myers' talk. But we also have all of this stuff about Jehovah using hail in the Bible. None of this can be proven just because it's telling us about these accounts, including the hail that formed part of the 10 plagues that was sent against the Egyptians. None of this can be proven. Just because it says in the Bible that this happened doesn't mean that it happened. What concerns me is that this stuff is being shown to children, and it has a very educational tone. So children will be taking away from this video, oh yes, all of these things in the Bible, all of these references to hail in the Bible totally happened, because it says so in this video that's also reciting scientific facts. It's merging together the scientific with the religious in a very manipulative way, so manipulative, in fact, that they cannot help but show again this gruesome image from the Pure Worship book. It's at the point where the narrator says, hail is also mentioned among the elements Jehovah will use in the future.
Hail is also mentioned among the elements Jehovah will use in the future against those who attack his people.
This particular image just gets routinely revisited in Jehovah's Witness video propaganda. The governing body seem absolutely thrilled with this depiction, which is terrifying, especially if you're a child, with this depiction of police in bulletproof vests and helmets, scrambling around with assault weapons, firing up into the sky. And in this case, to make it even more scary, they've added the hail. They've said, oh, hang on, the original wasn't quite scary enough. We're going to add some hail, and I think we also have some flames there. Flaming hail. There's going to be flaming hail falling from the sky. But no, they've made this already terrifying, gruesome image even more terrifying, again, with an obvious advantage to them, which is to scare people, particularly to scare children, into thinking all of this is about to happen. Hail and the study of hail isn't just about reminding ourselves of how amazing God is and how powerful he is. It's also, on this occasion, our way of reminding you that the world is out to get us as God's true people, and soon the world will end, and everyone who disagrees with us will be deservingly destroyed.
Jehovah can use wind and water to fight for his people. Why, he's the source of these natural forces, and he can control them perfectly. Please turn with me to Psalm 147, and let's notice that together. Psalm 147, 17. He hurls down his hailstones like morsels of bread. Who can withstand his cold? He sends out his word, and they melt. He makes his wind blow, and the waters flow. Did you notice to whom these natural forces belong? Verse 17 speaks of his hailstones. Verse 18 says he makes his wind blow. Yes, Jehovah is the source, and he can control them. He proved this in the past. Do you remember the examples given in the video? One was the account in Joshua chapter 10 when the Israelites were fighting the Amorites. Verse 11 states that while the Amorites were fleeing from Israel, Jehovah hurled great hailstones from the sky on them, and they perished. In fact, more died from the hail than from the sword of the Israelites. If Jehovah can create such powerful elements and control them, that should build our faith. It should convince us that he'll be able to use these powerful elements in the future when he defends his people at Armageddon.
Yet more reminders for Jehovah's Witnesses that Armageddon is coming and they will need to be defended because Gog of Magog, a coalition of nations, is out to get them or will be coming to round them up soon, armed with assault weapons. That's seriously what Jehovah's Witnesses are being told to expect here. But what I find most interesting in what we've just heard is this seeming fascination with the weather, and specifically the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses seem to believe, or their leaders seem to believe, that Jehovah controls the weather even to the extent of orchestrating storm clouds, of sending forth hail and rain and wind, you name it. When any of these natural phenomena occur, it's not just a cycle that's in process or that's been put in process when the world was made. No, God is actually guiding the weather so that we can attribute weather events to God. You might be thinking, come on, Lloyd, he can't really mean that. I'm sure Leonard Myers isn't stupid enough to be seriously suggesting that each weather event can be attributed to God. But listen to what he says.
Did you notice to whom these natural forces belong? Verse 17 speaks of his hailstones. Verse 18 says he makes his wind blow. Yes, Jehovah is the source, and he can control them.
God can and does control the weather, according to Leonard Myers and, by extension, the governing body. It's not just a cycle that's been put in process, again, when the earth was made. The weather is continually being steered, apparently, and guided by Jehovah. And this actually harmonizes with other things that we've heard from the governing body and through JW Broadcasting. There have been occasions where they have suggested, seriously suggested, that Jehovah has guided or controlled the weather to the benefit of the organization. Here's one example from the 2013 annual meeting when Jeffrey Jackson unveiled the new 2013 edition of the New World Translation.
It's interesting when we think about the production of this, we truly have seen Jehovah's hand in helping the project. Just one example. The brothers in the Wallkill printery mentioned to us that normally the worst time of the year to print Bibles is summertime. Because of the humidity, the heat, oftentimes they have to stop the presses. But they told us this year, when they had to do a lot of extra overtime to get these Bibles ready for us, and as you can see, there's one for each person here attending our program. This year, there was no stoppage of Bible production. We had the mildest summer for many, many years, and we thank Jehovah for that.
And more recently, in the January 2016 JW Broadcasting episode, we heard the following experience from a construction volunteer named Travis Brooks.
So for that extension, we would need cement and sand for backfill. And again, this was an island, which is ironic that you can't really get sand on because there's no companies that sell it. So what you do is you go from village to village, asking the village chief if he would be willing to sell sand off of his beach. Well, after visiting all the villages, no one was willing to sell any of their sand that we needed. At that point, things got worse because there was a typhoon approaching the island. So we just had the construction crew stop work. So the next morning, we were able to get in contact with the construction overseer on the island. And he said, I've got really good news. There was no damage. The storm took a turn just before it hit the island and just grazed it. He says, I have some other good news. I just got a call from the village chiefs. Apparently the storm surge had washed up a bunch of sand over their road to their villages, and they had no way of removing it. So they said, We have plenty of sand. Can you come and help us get rid of it? So we ended up having enough sand for the rest of the project. Jehovah's blessing is the most important thing that we can have on our projects, from the start to the finish.
So when it suits him, when it's needed in order for literature to be printed, or kingdom halls to be built or renovated, God is willing to use these immense forces in the clouds to the advantage and benefit of the organization, even intervening in Earth's weather patterns so that books can be printed and sand can be delivered for construction projects. And bear in mind, this typhoon that Travis Brooks was referring to seems to have been Typhoon Mysak, which, according to Wikipedia, killed 4 people, injured 10, and caused $8.5 million worth of damage to property. But all of this, apparently, this was collateral damage that was worthwhile just so Jehovah could assist in having a kingdom hall refurbished. And it obviously goes without saying, if we're going to attribute favorable weather events to Jehovah, if we're going to say Jehovah is responsible for printing books for Jehovah's Witnesses and helping the construction projects of Jehovah's Witnesses through the weather, what do we then say about weather events where Jehovah's Witnesses are injured or even killed, including in the Philippines Typhoon Haiyan, where dozens of Jehovah's Witnesses lost their lives? You can't have it both ways and suggest that God is responsible for guiding and controlling the weather when it suits you, and then invoke Ecclesiastes 9 verse 11, blaming it on time and unexpected events when things go wrong and people lose their lives. Seriously, if you take this view, which they seem to take, I mean, I'm not imagining things, am I, viewers? This is the language that we're hearing in this talk at the 2021 Powerful by Faith Convention. Leonard Myers is specifically saying that God controls the weather, that these verses in Psalms, he quotes from Psalm 147, he hurls down his hailstones, he sends out his word and they melt. God sends the hailstones, each and every hailstone, he sends it, and then he sends out a word and they melt. He makes his wind blow and the waters flow. Leonard Myers isn't reading these verses and saying, of course, this is just poetic. This is just a system that was put in place when the earth was made. It's not like God is literally sending out his word and melting hailstones or sending them forth to begin with. This is just a poetic verse. No, he's reading it and seemingly applying it literally. And this, as stupid as it is, this stupidity is at least consistent with the bizarre claims and rhetoric that we've heard previously from this organization when it comes to the weather and how God uses it.
The video partially quoted a scripture that emphasizes that point. Let's read it together. Job chapter 38, Job 38:22. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow? Or have you seen the storehouses of the hail, which I have reserved for the time of distress, for the day of battle and war? Did you notice that Jehovah says he has storehouses of hail reserved for the day of battle? Psalm 135 verse 7 mentions storehouses of wind. In these verses, Jehovah speaks of things he's reserved under his control for special purposes. How can this knowledge of Jehovah's storehouses build our faith? When we're attacked during the Great Tribulation by God's enemies, no matter how powerful or threatening they may seem, they can't possibly survive Jehovah's anger. For example, if we go back to Ezekiel chapter 38 and glance at verse 22, we see things Jehovah will use against those enemies of pure worship. Besides pestilence, fire, and sulfur, notice what else Jehovah will use in the middle of the verse. It says, I will rain down a torrential downpour and hailstones. Yes, Jehovah will use water. He may use hailstones of undisclosed size to destroy those wicked humans. Notice his assurance at the end of Ezekiel chapter 38. Notice verse 23. And I will certainly magnify myself and sanctify myself and make myself known before the eyes of many nations, and they will have to know that I am Jehovah. What a thrilling time that will be. As these enemies are defeated, they will know that it is Jehovah God who is bringing destruction upon them. May our anticipation of that happy outcome and our study of creation build our faith now as we confidently look forward to Jehovah's complete victory.
The man is obsessed, isn't he? He relishes the destruction of people who don't share his religious views. That's what we're seeing here. Effectively, a bloodlust for the destruction of all non-Jehovah's Witnesses when Armageddon comes, to the point where he is fixating on the size of the hailstones that will fall down on non-Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yes, Jehovah will use water. He may use hailstones of undisclosed size to destroy those wicked humans. What a thrilling time that will be. As these enemies are defeated, they will know that it is Jehovah God who is bringing destruction upon them.
He's not just salivating over the size of the hailstones of undisclosed size. Could be a kilo, could be the size of a car, who knows, undisclosed, but they'll be deadly. He's not just salivating over the fact that that ice will be used to kill people. He's also salivating over what's going to be going through the minds of the people who are being killed. As these enemies are defeated, they will know that it's Jehovah God who's bringing destruction upon them. What difference does it make? You want rid of these people. You want a global genocide where the earth is only populated by people who share your views, Leonard Myers. What difference does it make to you what's going on in their heads as they're being eliminated? It's kind of sadistic, isn't it? As they're being killed, as they're in the process of being slaughtered, in their final moments, during their final few breaths, they'll know. They'll know who it is who's doing this to them. That's probably the most chilling thing about what we've just heard. But we also have more sheer nonsense about weather and the way weather works and the fact that weather is controlled by God. We've heard Leonard Myers insisting that this verse that was used in the video about storehouses taken from Job 38, Leonard Myers is insisting that Job 38:22 is accurate when it says, "Have you seen the storehouses of the hail?" I included this verse in my 40 examples of scientific inaccuracies because what this is telling us, have you seen the storehouses of the hail, is that hail gets stored. It's made, and we all know how a storehouse works, and bear in mind this was written by people who were in an agricultural community. We all understand how storehouses work. You farm a crop, you store the crop, and you're storing it so that you can either use it to make food or sell it at a later stage. The hail isn't stored in that way. As the video itself explains, the hail forms in the clouds, and when it gets heavy enough to fall, when the updrafts can no longer sustain the weight of the hailstone falls.
Hail usually forms in warm weather, when turbulent air produces thunderstorms with powerful updrafts. Those updrafts can pull a piece of dust or ice high into the cloud, where water freezes around it. Each trip up into the cloud adds a layer of ice and weight until it becomes a hailstone that is heavy enough to fall.
So even Budget Attenborough admits that hail isn't stored in the clouds. There isn't like this massive storehouse of hail that's being moved around our planet so that when God wants to kill people, he just opens it and the hail all falls down. That's not how hail works. Hail forms in the clouds and it falls. It isn't stored. So this verse in Job, like many other verses in Job, I might add, this verse in Job 38 is actually scientifically inaccurate. It's making a statement about the natural order that we know, due to our study of meteorology, is fundamentally untrue. But rather than acknowledge this, Leonard Myers is all on board and fully endorsing this idea of storehouses of hail because it fits in with his apparent bloodlust. He can't wait to see these storehouses of hail deployed against those who don't share his views.
We know that Jehovah cares for all of his creation, but we all know that it is a test of our faith when things get difficult. So the question is, how can we build our faith so that we are strong and it can help us get through difficult times? Well, one way is by examining how Jehovah provides for his animal creation. Now, why is that helpful? Well, that examination gives us confidence that he will care for us as well. As an example, in the following video, note how Jehovah provides food for a massive sea creature.
The largest animal alive on Earth today is also the largest that has ever lived. The blue whale. Blue whales can grow to be over 30 meters long and weigh up to 180 tons. Its heart alone may weigh several hundred kilograms. How does such a large creature find enough to eat? The blue whale migrates great distances to find tiny crustaceans, known as krill. When a blue whale finds a school of krill, it accelerates towards the krill and opens its giant mouth. They may engulf hundreds of kilograms of krill with each lunge, amounting to several tons per day. Blue whales eat a lot. Yet Jehovah provides for them. And he will provide for us. There is the sea, so great and wide, teeming with countless living things, both small and great.
So yes, it's another Budget Attenborough video as part of this pro-creationist symposium titled Use Creation to Build Your Faith. And this particular part of the symposium, Use Creation to Build Your Faith, Sea Creatures, is being presented by governing body helper Robert Lucioni, who is a helper to the publishing committee. What have we really learned from this 2-minute video? Again, isn't it just regurgitating facts about the natural world that have been learned elsewhere? So the information we've just heard on the blue whale has been gathered by marine biologists who dedicate their lives to studying these creatures. This information, which represents the fruit of their labours, is being repackaged to give this creationist narrative and impress people that blue whales were both designed by God and are being fed by God. I mean, yes, God is literally feeding the blue whale every time it finds krill, apparently. We'll go into that in more detail. But isn't it all a little bit hypocritical, given the fact that this is an organization that dissuades people from pursuing higher education? The people who've studied these blue whales, these amazing creatures, and measured them and learned about their feeding patterns and their behavior, they've all been through higher education, or they've devoted their careers, years and years, if not decades of their lives, to improving everyone's understanding of these creatures and how they live. And yet this organization, which is effectively sponging off the efforts and labors and toil of these marine biologists, is turning around to its members and saying, don't you dare become a marine biologist. It's more important that you devote your lives to serving the organization, to warning people about the impending Armageddon. It would be a waste of time for you to study the natural world in this detail and to go to these lengths to improve our understanding of the natural world. That's hypocritical as far as I'm concerned, and it's a criticism that can be applied to multiple videos in this symposium. But as with the other videos, we have a scripture at the end which doesn't really tell us much. In fact, in this case, it tells us nothing.
There is the sea, so great and wide, teeming with countless living things, both small and great.
This is apparently supposed to be some profound divine wisdom, a verse in Psalms that essentially just says, oh, look, there's the sea. It's big, isn't it? And there are lots of things of different sizes living in it.
Now, we are amazed at the way Jehovah provides for all of his animal creation, including the sea creatures. The Bible describes this well if you look at Psalm 104, verses 27 and 28. Psalm 104, 27 and 28. All of them wait for you to give them their food in its season. What you give them, they gather. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. Yes, meditating on this aspect of creation builds our faith. For example, from the video, do you remember the size of this creature? Now, can you imagine if you had the assignment to feed just one blue whale? You just make sure that one whale has enough to eat every day. Can you imagine that? Where would we start? We'd have to hire teams of people, figure out how to get the food and how to move the food to where the blue whale is swimming. After we figure out where he's swimming, why, it would be a full-time job. And that would be to feed just one whale. And there's thousands of them. And yet, Jehovah has it all arranged day after day. We don't even think about it. You notice here in verse 27, it says that all of them wait for Jehovah to give them their food. Now, it doesn't mean that the whale just kind of floats on the top of the water and waits for food to jump in his mouth. No, it swims, it looks for the food. When it finds it, it goes after it, but Jehovah provides it. And if Jehovah has the capacity to feed a 180-ton blue whale, do you think he has the capacity to feed you and me and our families? Absolutely. See, we do the best that we can, and then we trust in Jehovah to do the rest. And like it mentioned there in Psalms, with the animal creation, we wait on Jehovah, and we are satisfied with what he provides.
I wonder if he is aware of how ridiculous and small-minded all of this sounds. I mean, if you think about it, he's saying two things simultaneously. On the one hand, he's obsessing over a verse in Psalms that's describing God feeding the animal kingdom, and rather than pointing to this as being poetic or figurative or suggesting that God put the entire natural order and its food chain in place so that blue whales get their food, he's stressing the point that, oh no, it's God that provides the food. Because just imagine if you had that job, just imagine if you had the job of feeding just one blue whale, what a difficult, nigh on impossible job that would be. Therefore, how incredible it is that Jehovah is literally giving food to these creatures to keep them alive, then at the same time, seemingly aware of how preposterous all of this is, he backpedals slightly and says,
Now, it doesn't mean that the whale just kind of floats on the top of the water and waits for food to jump in his mouth. No, it swims, it looks for the food. When it finds it, it goes after it, but Jehovah provides it.
The whale looks for the food and finds it, but it's Jehovah that's provided the food. Well, which is it, Robert Lucioni? Is Jehovah giving the whale the food, or is the whale finding the food through its own efforts, through its own endeavors, and therefore God isn't really involved in the situation? We actually have an article in ZME Science which gives us a far more satisfying explanation of the whole thing. Government and university researchers have been examining records of both whale migration and oceanic conditions in the California current ecosystem, a coastal upwelling biome, one of the richest and most productive marine ecosystems. Researchers found that blue whales almost perfectly match the timing of their migration to the historical average timing of krill production, rather than matching the waves of krill availability in any given year. The study, which was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, found that blue whales rely heavily on their memory in making these movement decisions. So it sounds to me as though blue whales are very much feeding themselves because they time their migrations depending on when there's going to be a bloom of krill in a given location. The krill aren't brought to the whale or miraculously provided by God. The krill are growing in the oceans, and the blue whales apparently time their migrations so that they can encounter these krill at precisely the right time. You can, if you want to, suggest that krill are made by God, as are blue whales. Therefore, the food has been provided to the blue whales because the krill were created. If the krill hadn't been created, the blue whale wouldn't have anything to eat, but the blue whale has only evolved to this immense size to begin with, thus becoming a blue whale because of the preponderance of krill in the oceans. You can't invoke God as the food source simply by virtue of the fact that he's apparently created the krill without explaining what happens when things go wrong. What happens when whales don't get fed? In order for Robert Lucioni to make this argument stick, to effectively argue that animals are always fed by God, God is the source of food when animals are feeding, he would need to come up with proof that animals never go starving. If even one blue whale in the history of blue whales has died through starvation, through lack of krill, this renders Robert Lucioni's entire argument absurd. And I think we all intuitively know that this will have happened, that some blue whales will have starved, that creatures that aren't blue whales, other ocean mammals, other land mammals, other animals, period, will have died, some even going extinct due to lack of a certain food. It's one thing for Robert Lucioni to be using this absurd reasoning to persuade Jehovah's Witnesses that they will always be taken care of, their needs will always be met, so long as they put service to Jehovah first. That's manipulative and spurious enough, but to suggest that Jehovah is providing food for animals when they eat, without offering any explanation at all as to what is happening when they starve, is cherry-picking and having it both ways.
Are you tired of being tired? Are you sick of being sick? Many of us are feeling the impact of living in this old system of things. But what can we do? Well, we try to improve our health or find some relief by medical means, or improving our diet, exercise, and getting more rest. But the bottom line is, we are infected with sin. And with sin comes sickness and the effects of aging. There's promise after promise, but are they really true? There is no pill, medicine, diet, or exercise program that can give us complete relief, removal of sickness, or what we really want and what we need, perfect health. But there is a promise recorded in God's Word that does give us confidence. Let's read this together at Isaiah chapter 33. Isaiah 33, and notice the reassuring words from Jehovah through the prophet Isaiah in verse 24. And there it says, "And no resident, no one, will say, 'I am sick.' The people dwelling in the land will be pardoned for their error. So sin will be removed in God's new world." Do you believe that? Can we really put faith in Jehovah's promise? Yes. This is not just another empty promise by a human. This comes from our Creator, Jehovah. Yes, He can guarantee it.
We're hearing from Ron Curzon, or as I like to call him, Robo-Ron. Robo-Ron is a helper to the governing body's teaching committee, and it seems he has the task of taking us through this next symposium item: use creation to build your faith, our bodies. Thankfully, this is the last part of this symposium. Thank goodness. Only one more Budget Attenborough video to go. But Ron Curzon is here talking about how our bodies, or he will be talking about how our bodies are so marvelous. They are evidence both that we were designed by an intelligent designer, and also, wouldn't you know, this intelligent designer has a plan for us, has a plan for making things all better. And when you think about his opening comments, isn't this precisely the sort of rhetoric you expect from a snake oil salesman, from a charlatan, someone who is selling something you don't need or trying to scam you out of your money with false claims? He makes the claim,
but the bottom line is, we are infected with sin. And with sin comes sickness and the effects of aging.
We are infected, apparently. We're all infected with sin. What incredible rhetoric to use in the midst of a pandemic. It's almost as though he's playing on the pandemic and what's already going on in people's minds about wanting to avoid being infected. He's using language that he knows is going to trigger a response in people. And he's telling everyone, you're infected. There's this infection that you have, and I have the answer. I have the solution. Others may promise you some kind of temporary relief, but I'm here to give you the answer. The answer is in God's kingdom, because if you listen to what I have to tell you, or if you listen to the organization I am a spokesperson for, it's all going to get fixed.
The people dwelling in the land will be pardoned for their error. So sin will be removed in God's new world. Do you believe that? Can we really put faith in Jehovah's promise? Yes.
Other religions may have promised you this, but take it from me, Ron Curzon, we're the real deal. We're not going to let you down here. And when you think about it, isn't this a problem not just for Jehovah's Witnesses, but for Christianity in general? Because what Christian denomination doesn't teach that we're infected with sin? All Christian denominations basically teach this fundamental truth that we're all sinners and we all need the salvation through Jesus Christ in order to purify ourselves, in order to get rid of this sin that God has made us be born with. God's given us this sin. We didn't have any control over whether we would be born with sin. He's allowed us to be born with sin, and he's also giving us this remedy, this belief system, that if we believe it unquestioningly and without any doubts whatsoever, if we believe, we'll get the panacea, we'll get this miracle cure, and we'll shake off this infection. If you think about it, isn't that a very toxic, narcissistic way of controlling people to suggest that they're broken in some way. And this is a problem I have with Christianity across the board, not just with Jehovah's Witnesses. This idea that you're broken, you're flawed in some way, and the only way you can get better, the only way you can fix yourself, is to embrace a particular religious ideology and follow unquestioningly with whatever you're told to think, say, or do.
Let's examine the human body and its amazing ability to repair itself. Please watch the following video.
Our bones are amazing. They support our bodies, protect our organs, and store almost all of the body's calcium, a mineral essential for our health. For their weight, bones are very strong. The feet of a track and field jumper may experience forces of several times his body weight. Bones can compress and bend, but sometimes they break. A fractured bone can heal well if properly set. Inflammation brings organic building blocks to the area, and soft tissue grows between the broken pieces. The soft tissue is replaced with harder tissue. The body replaces the harder tissue with new bone until the repair is complete. In children, the break may heal without leaving a trace. Jehovah gave every bone in our body this incredible ability to heal. I praise you because in an awe-inspiring way, I am wonderfully made.
Well, that was an amazing video. We learned a lot about what happens on the inside. We take it for granted that when we get a cut, broken bone, that our body automatically heals itself. King David was very impressed with the way that he was made and the way the human body works. Don't miss out on an opportunity to be inspired like David with all the inspiring creations around us. And think about this. If Jehovah could create our bodies with the ability to repair themselves like we saw in the video, he can certainly heal all infirmities. He can reverse the aging process, and he can prevent sickness in his new world.
Here we go again with these same old snake oil salesman tricks. You're broken, you're infected. I'm here to give you the solution. If you can just believe in what I'm telling you, you'll make it through this coming apocalypse into this new world where everyone will be well. Wouldn't you like that? Wouldn't you like to be a part of that? Wouldn't you like to have a perfect body with perfect health? Well, do and say exactly as I'm suggesting, and all will be well. This is a promise that Ron Curzon cannot deliver on. It's something that he cannot be held to. The governing body cannot be held to it. It is an unfalsifiable claim. He can't prove that he can deliver on this or that the organization can deliver on this. And I can't prove that they can't. It's just this extraordinary claim that requires extraordinary evidence. You need to give some compelling evidence if you're going to try and persuade people to drop everything and let an organization run by fellow human beings micromanage their lives. And the best evidence we've heard in this particular talk is bones heal themselves? I'm sorry, not convincing. The fact that bones heal themselves does not make one proposed theist god more true than another proposed theist god, and it most certainly doesn't mean that we all need to drop everything and follow whatever belief system Ron Curzon is recommending if we want to have perfect health.
Jehovah is a miracle worker. What's a miracle? How would you describe it? Well, let's give a simple definition. A miracle is a powerful work that can't be explained in human terms. Whenever Jehovah performs a miracle, he has a purpose. And one reason might be to strengthen the faith of his servants. And that's the title of this talk. Jehovah's powerful works inspire faith. Well, we love to consider the miracles recorded in the Bible. It's really faith-strengthening, isn't it? So during this talk, we're going to consider just a few. How about this one? Jehovah leads the Israelites out of Egypt. They arrive at the Red Sea, and it seems they're trapped. The sea's ahead of them. Pharaoh and his armies are behind. But Jehovah causes the waters of the Red Sea to part, and the Israelites cross over on dry land. When Pharaoh and his armies follow, Jehovah brings the sea back to its normal condition, and the cream of the crop of Egyptian manhood drowns. Now we know what effect that miracle had on the Egyptians, but what effect did it have on the Israelites? Let's see. Exodus chapter 14 and verse 31. I'll give you a moment so you can find that. It says, Israel also saw the great power that Jehovah wielded against the Egyptians, and the people began to fear Jehovah and to put faith in Jehovah. So that miracle inspired faith in the Israelites.
We're hearing from governing body member David Splain. He's taking us through the talk, Jehovah's Powerful Works Inspire Faith. This is a motivating talk in which Jehovah's Witnesses are being urged to look at miracles, at the various ways that Jehovah has come to the rescue in the form of miracles in Bible times. And to kick us off, of course, we have the story of the Egyptians drowning in the Red Sea. And bear in mind, of course, this is again a convention at which children will be present. We've established already in, I think, the Friday morning, in just the first few minutes of the Friday morning of the convention, it's acknowledged that there will be children in the audience. And here we have David Splain giving a talk in which he's just matter-of-factly talking about a whole bunch of people drowning.
When Pharaoh and his armies follow, Jehovah brings the sea back to its normal condition, and the cream of the crop of Egyptian manhood drowns.
So apparently that's a perfectly appropriate mental image for young Jimmy and little Sarah to be listening to as they're forcibly sitting through this convention with their parents. Again, this isn't optional. Jehovah's Witness children have to be subjected to this propaganda marathon, in this case, dwelling on the thought of Egyptian soldiers drowning. Meanwhile, what's the fate for the Israelites?
Now we know what effect that miracle had on the Egyptians, but what effect did it have on the Israelites?
Well, that's an easy one. Most of them end up dying in the desert. This is something you just don't think about when you are a fundamentalist Christian or a Jehovah's Witness. You never ponder what happens after these 3 million Israelites cross the Red Sea and end up on the Arabian Peninsula. It's basically going to be a slow and unpleasant way to die. And as proof, we need only go to Insight on the Scriptures, Volume 1, in the section that talks about Caleb. It says, because he had followed Jehovah his God fully, he was the only one of that adult generation, besides Joshua and some Levites, to enter the promised land in 1473 BCE. Imagine you were there. I don't think this happened, by the way. just to be clear, there is zero archaeological evidence for the exodus from Egypt, especially this notion that God parted the waters of the Red Sea, allowing 3 million Israelites to walk along the seabed. But imagine it did happen, and imagine you were there to welcome the Israelites on the other side. Imagine saying, "Welcome to the Arabian Peninsula. Bad news, I'm afraid. Every single adult who's here, apart from, where's Joshua? Joshua, hi. Apart from Joshua, Caleb, oh, hi, Caleb, and a few Levites, everyone else who's an adult, you're all going to die in the desert." I don't think that news would have gone down so well, do you? But this is apparently, we're led to believe, this is apparently what happened, and this was a miracle. It's a miracle that God did this, delivered his people so that they could escape the Egyptians and cross into the Arabian Peninsula, where the overwhelming majority of them who weren't children would die an unpleasant death. Yeah, what a miracle.
I hear you say, "I'd like to see a miracle. That'd help a lot to strengthen my faith." We see miracles every day. What's a miracle? It's a powerful work that can't be explained in human terms. A modern example of that is prayer. Isn't prayer amazing? Can you explain it? Jehovah can listen to millions of prayers in any language all at once. That's a miracle. But how does prayer build our faith? When we pray about a problem that nobody but Jehovah knows about, and our prayer is answered, our faith is strengthened. Now that is powerful. And what about all the experiences we hear where someone desperately prayed to God, "If you exist, please send someone to teach me about you." And 10 minutes later, a witness knocks on the door. Coincidence or miracle? Another miracle, our Christian brotherhood. Isn't it remarkable? Who can explain it? Former enemies become fast friends. You can go to a kingdom hall anywhere in the world, and you'll find your brothers and sisters. They'll be glad to see you. You'll feel at ease. You'll know what they believe and what they'll be studying at the meetings. You'll see and feel the love. In times of ethnic cleansing, how often do we read of brothers and sisters who risk their lives to hide fellow believers who happen to be from another tribe?
So this is a really interesting part of David Splain's talk. David Splain is here arguing that, number one, miracles happen today, and number two, miracles serve a purpose. They are needed as a means of strengthening faith.
I hear you say, "I'd like to see a miracle. That'd help a lot to strengthen my faith." We see miracles every day. What's a miracle? It's a powerful work that can't be explained in human terms. A modern example of that is prayer.
So miracles are still happening, apparently. They are needed as a means of strengthening faith. One example is prayer. The very fact that people pray is apparently a miracle. A second example that David Splain goes on to give is that of the experience of Jehovah's Witnesses calling when they're wanted. We routinely hear this claim, by the way. Apparently when someone is praying for guidance from God, for clarity about the Bible, apparently if a Jehovah's Witness calls shortly afterwards, this is proof that God is answering the prayer. No thought for the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are calling randomly on everyone, and it's inevitable when that's the situation that sooner or later a Jehovah's Witness is going to call on someone who happens to be praying to God, asking for help or praying for guidance in some way. Anyway, that's another example, apparently, of a miracle. Third example, unity of belief. Go anywhere in the world, and no matter what kingdom hall or congregation you visit, everyone believes the same as you do. Everyone's reading the same Watchtower article. You have a home, you have somewhere to stay. Wherever you go, there's unity. Yeah, That's kind of what you get when you have a cult where everybody has to believe exactly the same thing, or there are harsh penalties in the form of ostracism. And a fourth example of miracles, apparently, the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are willing to die for each other. No consideration of the fact that this is purely about conditional love. It's about a tribe looking out for its own interests. It would be more extraordinary, in my view, if Jehovah's Witnesses were willing to die for former believers, for those who stopped attending meetings, who were considered bad association. No, it's only the fellow believers that Jehovah's Witnesses are willing to risk their lives for, to stick their neck out for. And as I've repeatedly argued on this channel, there's nothing extraordinary about that. So anyway, these are apparently the 4 examples of modern day miracles that David Splain wants Jehovah's Witnesses to consider. My question is, which is it? Are miracles a thing today, or are they not? I ask that question because in 2005, there was an article titled Miracles, Fact or Fiction. This was the 2005 February 15th Watchtower. And there was a box in this article headed, Why Certain Miracles No Longer Occur. So it's not that miracles no longer occur, it's just that certain miracles no longer occur. Isn't that interesting? So there are still supernatural things happening. It's just that those supernatural things are different. They're sort of the things that you would expect to happen anyway, or that could be the product of coincidence. All of the stuff that couldn't be the product of coincidence, such as, for example, the Red Sea parting, that's the stuff that's no longer happening conveniently. And that's basically what it says in this article. If you'll allow me to read, it says, Paul explained that these gifts would pass away once they were no longer needed. Whether there are gifts of prophesying, they will be done away with. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will be done away with. For we have partial knowledge and we prophesy partially. But when that which is complete arrives, that which is partial will be done away with. Today, people have access to Bibles, as well as concordances and encyclopedias. Over 6 million trained Christians are assisting others to gain divine knowledge based on the Bible. Thus, miracles are no longer necessary to attest to Jesus Christ as God's appointed deliverer or to provide proof that Jehovah is backing his servants. Miracles are no longer necessary. And yet even this article acknowledges, well, it's not all miracles, it's just some miracles. It's just the miracles that are convincing. It's just the miracles that are compelling and persuasive that are no longer necessary. But what have we heard in David Splain's talk? Apparently miracles are necessary. Apparently just having a Bible isn't enough. People need miracles so that they can have their faith strengthened. That's what we've heard David Splain arguing, and he's given this list of miracles that are supposed to strengthen the faith of Jehovah's Witnesses. So my question is, which is it? Are we having miracles today or are we not? Are miracles needed or are they not needed? And is it not a little bit convenient for a huckster like David Splain that it's only the unconvincing miracles that people need in order for their faith to be strengthened?
Jehovah provided Daniel with the information he needed, and Daniel's life was saved. Well, that was Babylon. Now we're in Persia. And Daniel is once more facing death. Death by a lion. And once again, Jehovah comes to the rescue. He temporarily shuts the mouths of those lions. Well, we can imagine what effect that had on Daniel, but what about us today? What's the takeaway? What's the lesson? Today, Satan is walking about like a roaring lion, seeking to devour someone. We may never know how often Jehovah shuts the mouth of that lion, how often Jehovah protects his people as a group from Satan. When we're working from door to door, for example, it's dangerous out there. And we probably have no idea how busy the angels are in our behalf. And if someone does lose his life while in Jehovah's service or at a meeting, and it has happened, his loved ones can be sure of two things. First of all, their loved one did not lose Jehovah's approval. And second, the loss is only temporary. Satan can never do us any lasting harm. And one day, Jehovah will shut that lion's mouth permanently.
We're again hearing from governing body member David Splain, who is giving the talk, Jehovah's Powerful Works Inspire Faith. And this part of his talk was interesting for me. David Splain addresses the fact that it's possible to lose your life as a Jehovah's Witness, even when you're engaged in worship, even when you're doing the preaching work or attending a meeting, an activity for which you're supposed to receive some level of protection from Jehovah. I'm not making this up. This is the sort of thinking that's encouraged in Jehovah's Witness publications. Exhibit A, the 2013 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, on page 29, has an experience titled, "The Brothers Took Good Care of Us." Allow me to read a bit of it for you. On Sunday, June 3rd, 2012, there was a tragic air disaster in Nigeria. A plane carrying 153 persons crashed in a crowded suburb of Lagos, Nigeria's largest city, killing all on board and an unknown number on the ground. Collins Yue and his family lived on the top floor of the 3-story apartment building that was hit by the plane. When the accident occurred, the family was attending a congregation meeting at the Kingdom Hall. 153 people have died in this catastrophe. We're now zeroing in on one family of Jehovah's Witnesses who should have been in the apartment block that the plane hit. They weren't in the apartment block because they were attending a meeting. How does the article conclude? Collins said, "My relatives who had been opposed to my being a witness have changed their minds. One of them told me, 'Your Jehovah answers prayers. Hold on to your God because he helps you.' Another person said, 'Whatever you have been doing to serve God, continue to do it whole-souled. We have truly seen Jehovah's hand in our case. I am very happy.' Never mind the 153 people who perished in this tragedy. I'm okay because, as luck would have it, I was at my meeting, and actually, the fact that I was at that meeting is evidence of Jehovah's hand. Jehovah was looking out for me. I'm the important one here. Me and my family, we're the important ones. Never mind the 153 people who lost their lives." That's the sort of thinking this organization encourages when it comes to the protection that Jehovah's Witnesses can expect, while at the same time, as David Splain acknowledges in this talk, there are examples of Jehovah's Witnesses dying, doing what they're supposed to be doing what their religion expects of them. An example being an article that was posted to the jw.org website in 2012, fatal bus crash in Miami. On Saturday, December 1st, 2012, a group of 32 of Jehovah's Witnesses was traveling on a chartered bus to West Palm Beach, Florida, for a 2-day Bible education seminar when the bus crashed into an overpass at Miami International Airport at 7:25 a.m. 2 witnesses were killed and 4 others are in critical condition. Police reports indicate that the driver of the bus, who is not one of Jehovah's Witnesses, mistakenly entered the airport while heading to West Palm Beach. J.R. Brown, spokesman for Jehovah's Witnesses, states, "We now draw on our spiritual family for Bible-based comfort. 2 Jehovah's Witnesses are killed, and 4 in a critical condition because they were going on the wrong day and at the wrong time to a Jehovah's Witness assembly." So which is it? Is Jehovah protecting Jehovah's Witnesses when they're worshipping him, or is he not? David Splain sidesteps this question entirely and offers this weak consolation.
And if someone does lose his life while in Jehovah's service or at a meeting, and it has happened, his loved ones can be sure of 2 things. First of all, their loved one did not lose Jehovah's approval. And second, the loss is only temporary.
Yeah, don't bother yourself with questions as to why your loved one was killed doing what Jehovah expected of them, whereas another one was apparently saved because he was doing what Jehovah expected of him, or because his family was doing what Jehovah expected. Don't worry about all of that sort of thing. Just console yourselves with knowing that the loss is only temporary. Who really cares about death anyway? I mean, death's no big deal. We're all going to be resurrected into the paradise or into heaven at some future point. So what's the point of life, really? And don't forget that above all, you have Jehovah's approval. David Splain says so. He's part of God's channel with mankind, and doing what he says is crucial to surviving a future apocalypse. So yes, no need to worry about this whole conundrum. God's approval, the loss is temporary. Now it all makes total sense.
Today, many brothers are facing the heat of adversity. Russia, for example. Now, many brothers have been given long prison sentences because they won't bow down to the state. Now, Jehovah doesn't prevent this from happening any more than he prevented Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from being thrown into the furnace, but he does help them. What do we notice about them as they're being led off to prison? They're smiling. They're serene. They're at peace. They know their God, and when they come out, there won't even be the smell of fire on them. Their faith will be intact. Their fine conduct also results in a good witness to the jailers and others who hear about the persecution.
Yet more salivating over the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses in Russia are under ban, are being persecuted, are being clamped down on by the Russian authorities. Unsurprisingly, David Splain isn't missing an opportunity to fixate on this and point to it as evidence that God is protecting his people, and his slam dunk proof that this is the case is this.
What do we notice about them as they're being led off to prison? They're smiling. They're serene. They're at peace. They know their God.
Yes, apparently the fact that followers of a certain cult smile when they're being incarcerated is proof that they have God's protection. Presumably when fellow believers in the same or other countries or in other periods of Jehovah's Witness history come off worse, to the extent where they're brutalized or killed, well, this must mean that they weren't smiling enough.
Before we can have faith in Jehovah, we have to get to know him. We have to learn about his powerful works, those past and those present. And as we study his dealings with his people in the past, we see that Jehovah always keeps his promises. He's promised to bring about a righteous new world, and we can take that promise to the bank. And through prayer and association with his organization, we can experience the modern-day miracles that Jehovah is performing. The more we know about Jehovah, the more we'll love him. The more we love him, the more we'll want to tell others about him. The more we preach, the stronger our faith will become, and we will be made powerful by faith.
One of the benefits of doing these rebuttals as my job, in other words, not just as a labour of love, but literally as my full-time job, thanks to the generosity of my patrons, who support me very generously and allow me to hire a video editor and buy lots of equipment and that kind of thing. The benefit of doing this year after year, thanks to their support, is that I study this material and know it so well that I'm able to pick up when something gets repeated, when a speaker like David Splain just trots out the same material year after year.
We see that Jehovah always keeps his promises. He's promised to bring about a righteous new world, and we can take that promise to the bank.
When Jehovah promises that he's going to take this earth and turn it into a paradise, you can take that to the bank. Jehovah will keep his promise.
We are properly in snake oil salesman territory here, aren't we? When it's getting to the point where, like a dodgy used car salesman, he's just repeating the same line over and over again. He doesn't really believe this. This is just his pitch, his sales pitch, that he trots out whenever he touches on a certain subject. In this case, he's talking about the certainty with which we can look forward to the fulfillment of God's promises regarding a paradise earth. Because he is a huckster and a charlatan, and in the business of deceiving people, he can't keep track of the fact that he's using the same sales pitch over and over again. And I find it fascinating that no one else is noticing this. It's gotten to the point where I am following this material more closely than he is, and than the people whose job it is to tap him on the shoulder and say, Brother Splain, you sort of said that only in last year's convention. Maybe they wanted to say that, but they were too afraid of him. Who knows? The point is, isn't it obvious that this is all one big scam? The guy is just repeating the same slimy promises year on year. They are promises he cannot be held accountable for. They are unfalsifiable. He's just making it up as he goes along and hoping he can scam as many people as possible.
When you look at Adam, Eve, and Cain, who all displayed a lack of faith in Jehovah, can you imagine what that family dynamic must have been like for faithful Abel? The tension, hostility, resentment, lack of spiritual discussions? Do you think Abel's faith was tested? Indeed it was. And today, our faith may likewise be tested by the actions of those who choose not to serve Jehovah. We invite you to watch the following reenactment. As you do, note how a sister's faith is tested.
I arrived in a new city during the rainy season. It rained all day, every day, for a whole month. At that time, there were only 3 publishers there. The first sister I met was my new pioneer partner. At first, I felt as if the people in this territory spoke a different language. When I tried to talk to some people about the Bible, they did not like it, and some were even afraid of these new ideas. When government officials noticed that we had shared some tracts with the people, they began to watch us and followed us for about 3 months. I felt overwhelmed by all of this and became very anxious. I had few return visits or opportunities to speak about Jehovah. I felt lost. I didn't know what to do or where to go. I often wondered, Father, why did you send me here? It was like I had gone from being on a mountain peak to the bottom of a deep valley.
As our sister adjusted to her new circumstances, did you note how her trials made her feel? Anxious, lost, and overwhelmed.
Yes, that probably had something to do with the fact that this sister, this Jehovah's Witness lady, had almost certainly been sent to preach as a Jehovah's Witness in a country where the work of Jehovah's Witnesses is banned. This, by the way, is William Turner. William Turner is a helper to the service committee of the governing body. His talk here is titled Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless, Abel, Not Cain. And we've just seen a short video which again seems to be a reenactment of the experience of a Jehovah's Witness lady moving to a city in what must almost certainly be China. I mean, where else could this be? I found it interesting that in this city, there were only 3 publishers. So 3 Jehovah's Witnesses engaged in preaching activity in a whole city. What does that tell us about God's interest in making sure everyone around the world has an equal opportunity to learn the truth, to be saved in advance of Armageddon? As I've long argued, it's fairly obvious, isn't it, that Jehovah is disproportionately interested in saving people from certain parts of the world. In other parts of the world, particularly large parts of Asia, including China, Jehovah's not quite so interested in saving people, is he? Certainly not if there's only 3 Jehovah's Witnesses in a whole city tasked with converting people in that city into God's one and only true organization. Anyway, regarding this lady's experience, she is obviously disturbed by the fact that, first of all, she's learning a new language, it seems, and she's also being shadowed by cops because, again, she's being asked to do something that is against the law. When you are a Jehovah's Witness, the ends justify the means. Even if preaching is dangerous, even if it puts you in harm's way, you are expected to do it. And they even send Jehovah's Witnesses from Western countries out to China and have them work their way into Chinese society and try to befriend people with the aim of converting them into the faith. I've had 2 ladies on my channel, Amber Scorer, writer of the book Leaving the Witness, and more recently, Natalie Sanchez. Both of these ladies have first-hand experience of what it's like doing missionary work in China. And interestingly, in both cases, it was a combination of the language barrier and the freedom afforded by doing this work undercover. In other words, no longer being on this hamster wheel of continually attending meetings and keeping up with this strict regimen of observing your faith. It was the freedom of being off the radar and being left to your own devices that greatly helped both of these ladies in realizing that it's not the truth, that in fact they were being used and exploited and put in a perilous situation by a cult that was putting its own needs first and their needs very much second.
Abel remained steadfast when under trial. He didn't let the actions of his family affect his faith, and we can't let the actions of others affect ours. We must never allow something that another person says or does to make us feel ashamed of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So be ready. Be quick to identify yourself as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It will help to build and fortify your faith. Well, let's now go back to our sister. In the following reenactment, note how she imitates Abel's faith.
I studied the Bible to see how Jehovah cared for his servants in the past. For example, I read how Jehovah told Jacob throughout his life, "I will be with you wherever you go." I pictured Jehovah telling me the same thing. "Don't worry, just go, and I will always be there to help you." I begged him to help me to be balanced, to feel peace, and to have courage to go out in the ministry. One day, Jehovah helped me to find a very good Bible student. It was an absolutely wonderful and unexpected gift from Jehovah. Our small group joins congregation meetings through the internet. This arrangement is a valuable source of spiritual food for me. We get together for meals and association as well. The experiences on JW Broadcasting make me feel that I am not alone, and I always smile and wave goodbye at the end. It's wonderful to be here.
Did you notice how our sister built up her faith in Jehovah? She imitated Abel's example, and she followed those steps. The first step, she pondered on spiritual matters. She studied the Bible to see how Jehovah cared for his servants in the past, and then she applied what she learned to her situation.
Apparently, following Abel's example is all about convincing yourself that you're in God's one and only true organization and begging Jehovah to help you. That's all this lady did, according to what she said.
I pictured Jehovah telling me the same thing. Don't worry, just go, and I will always be there to help you. I begged him to help me to be balanced, to feel peace, and to have courage to go out in the ministry.
Picturing Jehovah saying, just go and I'll be there to help you, and begging Jehovah to help you feel peace and to have courage, that's apparently the secret. That's the winning formula, apparently, when it comes to being faithful. And I'm sorry, it's going to work in some cases because you're going to convince yourself that you have God's backing. You're going to try really hard to prove that you have God's backing. And in some cases, your efforts are going to work. In this instance, the lady says,
One day, Jehovah helped me to find a very good Bible student. It was an absolutely wonderful and unexpected gift from Jehovah. Our small group joins congregation meetings through the internet.
Interesting that she doesn't clearly say whether this Bible student is going to the meetings or not. She literally just says, Jehovah helped me find a very good Bible student. It was a wonderful and unexpected gift from Jehovah. Well, if you listen to my interview with Amber Scora, and in fact with Natalie Sanchez, we learned from both of those interviews that getting Bible students or getting Bible studies in China is basically about tricking people into thinking that you're their friend. So meeting people, befriending people, and trying to surreptitiously work into the conversation Jesus and the Bible. And as you feel progressively more confident that they're not going to turn you into the authorities, you weave in, oh, by the way, when I say Jesus and the Bible, what I really mean is follow the Jehovah's Witness interpretation of Jesus and the Bible, and you'll survive Armageddon. Everyone that you know in this country, all of your friends and family, they're all doomed. They're all going to die pretty soon. But good news, you're the exception because you're becoming a Jehovah's Witness. That's essentially the strategy that Jehovah's Witnesses working underground in China are pursuing. Apparently, it's some amazing example of faith that we all need to follow. And am I the only one who detects more than a bit of insecurity in this talk by William Turner?
And today, our faith may likewise be tested by the actions of those who choose not to serve Jehovah. We must never allow something that another person says or does to make us feel ashamed of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
If what you have is really the truth and you are convinced that you have the truth, this advice is superfluous. I mean, what purpose does it serve? Either you have the truth or you don't have the truth. It should make no difference whatsoever what other people say or do, and whether people denigrate your beliefs or not. Your faith is rock solid because you know you have the truth. The only time it's going to be a problem, the only time it's going to make you feel ashamed of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses, is if you're not fully convinced. And for me, William Turner is almost acknowledging this, that this is going to be common among Jehovah's Witnesses. They will have these insecurities. They will be easily swayed in certain situations where they're encountering pushback on their beliefs, where they're having to field criticism and defend their beliefs. This is an issue, or will be an issue, for many Jehovah's Witnesses because they are insecure. And they are insecure because at a certain level, deep down, they know that what they believe isn't really true, or it's at least no more true than what other religions teach. What he's describing, really, when you think about it, is cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when your brain is having to balance, on the one hand, this underlying insecurity that you're being taken advantage of and lied to, and on the other hand, this certainty, this assuredness that this must be God's one and only truth, and anyone who's criticizing you must be wrong.
We are told that the faithful man Enoch chose to walk with God. So when he was threatened, he looked to Jehovah for security. On the other hand, Lamech, a descendant of the murderer Cain, opted to provide his own security. This led to killing a man in supposed self-defense. Now, Enoch and the killer Lamech both lived in a violent world, but their violence reaction plans were totally different. As we descend deeper into the last days, people will become more desperate and violence will only escalate.
We're watching Gary Bro, a helper to the service committee. He's giving a talk titled Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless. Enoch, not Lamech. In fact, we are in a symposium where different good Bible characters are contrasted with bad Bible characters. And in this particular instance, it's not really working, or I find the entire premise of this part of the symposium kind of cringeworthy. If you go to Genesis chapter 4, verse 23, it says, Then Lamech composed these words for his wives Ada and Zillah. Hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Give ear to my saying. A man I have killed for wounding me, yes, a young man for striking me. If 7 times Cain is to be avenged, then Lamech 77 times. It seems based on this random poem attributed to Lamech, this entire talk has been structured with Gary Bro summarizing Lamech as follows.
On the other hand, Lamech, a descendant of the murderer Cain, opted to provide his own security. This led to killing a man in supposed self-defense.
Is it just me, or is Gary Bro reading an awful lot into what amounts to just a throwaway poem? We don't really know any details. All we know is, according to this poem, again, if we take it all at face value, which we shouldn't, but taken at face value, it's just a poem about someone reacting to someone attacking them and killing them. And based on this poem, with, again, no details, Gary Bro is condemning this Bible character called Lamech for not trusting in Jehovah enough. He wasn't faithful enough, because if he were faithful, he wouldn't have acted in self-defense. He would have, I don't know, presumably allowed either himself and or his family to continue to be attacked and potentially killed by whoever was assailing them at a time when there wasn't law enforcement, there weren't police to appeal to. It was every man for himself. Anyway, this is the Bible verse the organization has chosen to invoke in essentially reminding Jehovah's Witnesses that they are pacifists. They must not in any way, shape or form resort to violence themselves, even when it comes to self-defense.
In the following dramatization, let's see how reacting to violence could suddenly become a personal test of faith in Jehovah.
Llama Enrique, llama Enrique. My son barely escaped the gangs. Again.
¿Quién te hizo eso? ¿Qué te pasó? ¿Estás bien?
We're the only ones without a gun. I don't want to keep a gun for protection. But how else can I protect my family?
In today's violent society, even in the perceived safest of neighborhoods, we could have a similar experience. If so, how can we imitate Enoch's faith? For one thing, he recognized a simple but fundamental truth. Jehovah hates violence. So for us to walk with God as Enoch did, we must reject violence as an option. What can help us to do that? Don't harbor retaliatory thoughts. Violent thoughts can lead to violent actions without thinking about the consequences. Learn to recognize situations that could harm us, then act to avoid the danger. That's the counsel given at Proverbs 22 and verse 3. The shrewd one sees the danger and conceals himself, but the inexperienced keep right on going and suffer the consequences. So we're encouraged to conceal ourselves if we sense danger. Think ahead, look around, be perceptive, and avoid situations that may become violent. Avoid violent entertainment. Why? It frequently portrays a violent response when a character's safety is threatened. All sorts of objects or weapons are depicted as strategies to kill or overpower the opponents.
This, for me, is yet another example of Jehovah's Witnesses having their lives micromanaged. In this case, they are being reminded that they are not to resort to violence, even in self-defense, or in this case, as portrayed in this dramatization, by considering having a weapon or a gun in your household as a last resort in case you are attacked. And don't get me wrong, I have my own opinions on guns. I happen to have grown up in a country where there were gun restrictions. I feel societies that do regulate gun ownership are safer, including the one I live in now, Croatia. If everyone has access to guns and there are almost no restrictions whatsoever, almost inevitably bad things are going to happen. I feel that's what we're seeing at the moment in America. But that aside, if you're living in a lawless country rife with corruption and violence, it should be your decision as to what steps you take to protect yourself and protect your family. But Jehovah's Witnesses are not being dignified with the freedom to make this call themselves in this video. This video is all about shaming any Jehovah's Witnesses who, in the situation depicted, do decide to take reasonable measures to make sure they have some fallback option in case they are attacked. Rather than simply leaving it to Jehovah's Witnesses to navigate these issues for themselves as adults, Gary Bro wants to micromanage them or wants to point to the organization's advice, which in this case is to conceal yourself.
Learn to recognize situations that could harm us, then act to avoid the danger. So we're encouraged to conceal ourselves if we sense danger. Think ahead, look around, be perceptive, and avoid situations that may become violent.
Oh, why did no one else think of that? Yes, who needs guns when you can simply indulge in some kind of hide-and-seek game? It's all about concealing yourself. If only everyone could realize this is the way out of the whole gun debate. When you have an armed shooter or you have someone threatening your life, you just run away. Find a tree or a shrub to hide behind. Maybe dig a hole and cover yourself over. Build a bunker. Do whatever you can to get out of harm's way, because then you're smarter than everyone else who hasn't thought this through like Gary Bro has with his profound wisdom about running away and concealing yourself. And to be serious for a moment, I've tried this advice. I can remember being brought up as a Jehovah's Witness and going to school and routinely being bullied, mostly because I was a Jehovah's Witness. It got to the point where I was literally being chased around the school property by this particular gang of bullies. And when I got home from school and I'd be crying to my parents about it, they would always be reciting this thinking. Well, you can't defend yourself, Lloyd. You can't fight back. You've just got to run. And the way it was explained to me was this: if they chase you into a corridor where there's no way out, there's just 3 walls, and you're at the end wall, and they're coming in, you're completely sealed off, there's no escape. What you need to do in that situation, Lloyd, is figure out a way of climbing that wall. That's the way it was explained to me by my parents. And we can see where they got such ridiculous thinking from. It's from this organization that micromanages people to the extent of saying, you don't get to defend yourselves. You have to find any solution whatsoever that doesn't involve violence, because if you react with violence, even in self-defense, this means that you're not faithful enough. And am I the only one who finds it incredibly hypocritical for Gary Bro to be going on about violent entertainment?
Avoid violent entertainment. Why? It frequently portrays a violent response when a character's safety is threatened.
Avoid violent entertainment. Yes, that's an interesting thing to be saying at a convention of Jehovah's Witnesses where you've just shown a violent film with guns being fired and a scary situation, and children are having to sit through this. As I've repeatedly said, there's no opt-out for young children. They have to sit through with their parents and watch that gun being fired in the street and this incredibly scary situation. They have to sit through this video, and they have to sit through all of the other videos in this convention which are not age appropriate. We've already had in the Friday morning Uncle Tony in Uncle Tony's story time describing rape, describing the materialized angels forcing themselves on women. Children have to sit through this, and Gary Bro is here talking about the need to avoid violent entertainment. Well, isn't it his bosses, the governing body, who need to be thinking along these lines, who need to be thinking about the extent to which they use violence in their propaganda material, as evidenced by the fact that, by their own admission, parents of Jehovah's Witness children have been writing in and complaining.
We might mention that we've had just a few parents write in expressing concern that some of our videos depict scenes that could have an effect on children who've been protected from anything even hinting at an act of violence.
The concern expressed is that some scenes could have an effect on children who've been protected from all negative circumstances on TV, including daily news reports of catastrophes being faced by real people. Parents need to give their children a realistic idea of what we will face in the near future.
We don't feel comfortable watering down the inspired insight that Jehovah has preserved for the benefit of true worshipers.
Be assured that the governing body is not trying to scare anyone.
So when it suits Tony Morris and Stephen Lett and the rest of the governing body, violence is okay. Because, look, we're just being realistic here. We don't want to water down what the Bible says about God's judgment. So we insist, Jehovah's Witness parents, we know better than you do. We insist that your children sit through our depictions of violence in our conventions. They have the gall to essentially say this to parents and adopt this incredibly we know better than you attitude, while at the same time, in Gary Bro's talk, saying, oh, of course, we'd want to avoid violent entertainment.
In the following dramatization, note how our brother imitates Enoch's example.
Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Faith is the assured expectation of what is hoped for. I do have faith in God's promises, but if a gun is what I need to protect my family, won't Jehovah understand?
Hey, agárralo, mantén el ojo. ¿Dónde está tu esposo? ¿Dónde está tu esposo? ¿Dónde está tu esposo? Hey, dámelo, que esta familia no vas a poder hacer nada. ¿Cómo que no vas a hacer nada? Voy a poder hacer algo. Voy a poder hacer algo.
¿Estás bien, Pa?
No, I couldn't do that. I'm not the first to face a violent world. Hebrews 11:5 received the witness that he had pleased God well. Enoch lived among extreme violence, but he walked with God. I can imitate his faith.
Did you notice this brother's violence reaction plan? His faith in God's promises helped him to look to Jehovah for security instead of a gun. He realized he was not the first to face a violent world and made the firm decision to imitate the faith of Enoch. In this way, even if we find ourselves in a violent situation, our violence reaction plan will allow us to imitate Enoch and please God well.
This is what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness. You do not have the freedom to make your own decision when it comes to your personal protection. And I've shared my views on the need for gun regulations and how beneficial they are in curbing gun violence. But that's really a separate argument to what should be done if you happen to live in a society where there aren't gun restrictions or where gun restrictions are policed poorly. What do you do? That has to be everyone's individual decision. That has to be your call if you have not only yourself but a family to think about. I mean, imagining myself in that situation where guns are rife and I've got children, I probably would have a gun. I'd want to take whatever steps are necessary to make sure my family has a fighting chance of survival if I were unlucky enough to live in that sort of society. But as Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't have that freedom. You're shamed into thinking that you're lacking in faith if you're in any way violent, even if it's self-defense. And to add insult to injury, they have the gall to complain about violent entertainment while at the same time playing incredibly scary, triggering, violent videos that are not age appropriate for an audience in which the attendance of children is mandatory.
In the following dramatization, note how a parent's faith is tested.
Another busy day. My daughter's going to preach, I'm off to work, and it's family worship night.
Bye, Dad.
Have a good day, sweetie.
All right, listen up. I got an announcement for everybody. Starting this month.
What? More required overtime?
Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Let's get back to work.
It's extra money. But how can I do it and take care of Regina?
Dad, isn't it family worship night?
Maybe a little later, sweetie.
I wanted to, but I was spent. Again.
Our brother knew it was family worship night. But extra work, the pressures of life were dragging him down. His faith was being tested. Would he imitate Noah or his neighbors? Noah's neighbors lacked faith. They did not do what was needed to save their families. Instead, Jesus said they were so distracted by their daily lives, eating and drinking, getting married, that they took no note until the flood came and took them all away. Life in this system is hard. We appreciate the hard work and effort that you parents are making to keep a good spiritual routine for your family. We know how tempting it can be to say, well, we'll study later, or we'll pick it up again next week. See the danger. Putting off our spiritual routine this week can easily lead to 3 weeks, and then 6 weeks, and then not at all.
We're watching John Ekron, who is a helper to the personnel committee of the governing body. He is here giving a symposium item titled Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless, Noah, Not His Neighbours. And hopefully you share my indignation at this message and the way it's being delivered. Jehovah's Witness parents are here essentially being told, skip family worship night and you endanger the life of your child. What happened to Noah? He built an ark and survived. What happened to Noah's neighbours? They didn't get in the ark and they drowned. Do you want to drown, or do you want to be otherwise executed by God when he brings Armageddon? Of course you don't. So you'll do as we tell you, and you'll make sure your children are indoctrinated at family worship sessions once a week.
Noah and his wife could hardly have shielded their boys from all the stories that circulated about those giants. Imagine some of the discussions that Noah and his wife had with their boys. The materialized wicked angels and their Nephilim sons were men of fame and admired by everyone for their superhuman capabilities. Even today, people are fascinated with stories and movies of humans with superpowers. But those wicked angels and their sons, the Nephilim, were nothing to be admired or imitated. Noah taught his sons not to admire or copy them. They had to help their boys see that Jehovah felt hurt by the violence and rebellion in the world. The boys needed to learn to love Jehovah and imitate him. Parents, take the time to teach your children to hate what Jehovah hates and to love what Jehovah loves. Jehovah hates liars, cheaters, bullies, selfishness, and greed. On the other hand, Jehovah loves honesty, peace, love, sharing, and self-control.
Hold on, John Ekron. What was that Jehovah hates again?
Jehovah hates liars, cheaters, bullies, selfishness, and greed.
So he must hate the governing body. Doesn't that describe precisely the Jehovah's Witness leadership? We're talking about 8 bloated dudes who meet every Wednesday at their lakeside compound and discuss ways to micromanage the lives of the 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses who follow them and who put their own needs first, or the needs of their organization first, to the extent where they persuade Jehovah's Witnesses to die rather than accept blood transfusions, and to the extent where they put children in harm's way through their horrendous policies on child abuse, which include keeping a database on predators that doesn't get handed over to law enforcement. If that's not selfish and greedy, I don't know what is. And as for bullies, how about the shunning policy? How is that not bullying 8.5 million Jehovah's Witnesses if you're literally telling them, follow us, do as we say to the letter, or we can arrange for your believing family members to abandon you? So yes, that part really grated. But again, we're dealing with a talk where we're supposed to be reminded of the flood of Noah's day and the faithfulness of Noah versus the faithlessness of Noah's neighbors, which included, of course, the Nephilim. There were giants, apparently, in Earth's distant past, We just haven't found any archaeological remains to support their existence yet. But yes, these Nephilim existed, apparently, according to John Ekron, and he uses the Nephilim to make a not-so-subtle dig at superhero films.
Even today, people are fascinated with stories and movies of humans with superpowers.
It may be subtle, it may be, as I've said, just a dig. He hasn't said, don't go watching Marvel films, don't go watching superhero films, but I am telling you, as someone raised in a Jehovah's Witness family, as someone raised by Jehovah's Witness parents who took their beliefs very seriously, there will be Jehovah's Witness parents in the audience who will prevent their children from watching superhero films based purely on this part of John Ekron's talk.
In the following dramatization, note how our brother imitates Noah's faith.
Violence and looting continue despite curfews.
The world is such a mess. It's everything Jesus said it would be. She's so good, spiritually minded like her mother was. Can I expect she'll stay that way on her own?
Generation of Design, premiering tonight at 8:30 Central.
In the wake of a massive earthquake with a magnitude of 8.1 that struck off the
Leaders from around the world have come together and made notable statements on social media today expressing confidence. One leader posted, "Finally, we are seeing global coordination that gives us the hope of a secure future. We have a unique opportunity to end
If it is just like Noah's day, I need to show faith like he did.
Let's do our family worship.
Okay.
I need to show faith in Jehovah and work hard to save my family.
Did you notice how our brother acted in faith? Our brother imagined what could happen to his daughter if she lost her spirituality and adopted the lifestyle of the world. What he saw really scared him. He immediately turned off the TV and joined his daughter for family worship. Parents, by imitating Noah, you can save both yourself and your family.
And there we have it. This, for me, is the most disgusting and overtly manipulative video that we've seen so far at this year's convention. What was all that about? A girl is sitting in a leather jacket and wearing eyeliner and being collected by her boyfriend, and we have ominous music, we have a heartbeat sound effect. It's like it's some kind of horror movie, and it's all intended to terrify Jehovah's Witnesses into thinking that if they don't keep up with their indoctrination routine, specifically regarding family worship evenings, there's a good chance their child is going to die when Armageddon comes. That's the clear message here, because we're talking about the context of Noah's day and how if you weren't in the ark when the flood of Noah hit, you were going to drown. And similarly today, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, if you're not faithful as a Jehovah's Witness when Armageddon comes, you're going to be on the wrong end of a fireball. Do you want your daughter to die a fiery death while she's out on a date with her boyfriend? Of course you don't. So you're going to do what's expected of you as a Jehovah's Witness parent and make sure your daughter gets indoctrinated. What does this extreme level of scaremongering say about this organization? They can't simply say, we'd like it if you keep up with your family worship evenings, because that way you will strengthen your family spiritually and they will benefit. No. They have to put on the ominous music. They have to include the heartbeat sound effect. They have to inspire fear and terror in the minds of Jehovah's Witness parents because they want the next generation of Jehovah's Witness followers to be indoctrinated, whatever it takes.
Now, why should you and I be interested in Moses' example of faith? Because, like Moses, we face situations that require choices, decisions that reflect the quality of our faith. For example, note how an elder faces a test of his faith in the following dramatization.
Danny's gonna look after the business while we're away. I only scheduled a few small jobs. I'm sure he can handle it. It's our assigned convention, and I planned as best I could for us to go together. But some things you just can't see coming. Hello? Danny was in a panic. He got trouble calls from my 2 biggest accounts. It was bad. I can't lose their business.
This is Seth Hyatt's symposium talk titled Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless, Moses, Not Pharaoh. Seth Hyatt is a helper to the service committee of the governing body. It seems this talk is all about reminding Jehovah's Witnesses that attending the convention is more important than the prosperity of their businesses. That's, I'm afraid, where this is going as we see the second part of this video dramatization. And this is the mentality you need to have as a Jehovah's Witness. Your worship comes first. It's not just about doing the best you can when it comes to preaching. It's not just about attending meetings as they interest you, as they fit in with your schedule. No, your schedule needs to rotate around your worship. So attending the convention is a priority. It's not like you're going to get disfellowshipped if you don't attend the convention, but questions will be asked if you don't at least attend. And obviously I'm talking about under normal circumstances when there isn't a global pandemic and when the convention isn't being conducted over videos. But under normal circumstances, you need to attend at least minimum the Saturday and Sunday. And if you're not arranging your affairs to attend all 3 days alongside your family, again, questions are going to be asked. People are going to wonder whether you're really taking your faith seriously. And let's remember as well, this is a religion that teaches if you're not putting Jehovah first in your life, you're liable to be destroyed at Armageddon. So unsurprisingly, the guy in this dramatization is going to pull out all the stops to make sure he attends the convention, even if it means his business playing second fiddle.
Now, how about that elder who we met earlier? Let's look in and see how he imitates Moses in making a decision.
Okay, just find the parts and I'll call you back. This will take all weekend.
You want us to go? Will you get the program later?
Yeah, and I'll have to text John that I can't be an attendant. But what'll I miss that I can't get later? Hey, welcome, welcome. Anywhere.
In Hebrews 11, verse 26, it says, Moses considered the reproach of the Christ to be riches greater than the treasures of Egypt, for he looked intently toward the payment of the reward. Of what value is being a prince of Egypt compared with being the Christ?
Honey, here, What do you think?
Danny? Yeah, here's what I want you to do for now. And we'll pick up the pieces when I get back.
Did you notice how the elder made a decision based on his faith? With his eyes of faith, he could see the blessings that he and his family would enjoy if they attended the convention together.
Yes, the blessings they could enjoy if they attended the convention together, like cleaning the convention facility and this guy serving as a volunteer attendant or steward, meaning that he gets to wear an orange lanyard around his neck and feel important directing people on where to sit, or telling people to quieten down if they're making enough noise, or get all excited if it seems someone's entered the venue who might be an apostate. Think of all the excitement he'd be missing out on if he didn't attend the convention in person, and if he wasn't an attendant, and if he wasn't able to clean the facility. Seriously, it's one thing to commend people for making it to all 3 days of the convention, which is what we heard Jeffrey Jackson doing on the Friday morning of this convention.
You'll certainly be happy that you made the effort to attend all 3 days of this convention.
It's another thing entirely to produce a dramatization depicting a business owner knowingly putting his business at risk in order to attend the convention. Again, there are no half measures when it comes to worship as a Jehovah's Witness. You're either in it completely and willing to attend all 3 days of the convention, or there's something wrong with you. You are lacking in faith.
In the following dramatization, note how a Bible student's faith is tested as he thinks about whether he could start sharing in the ministry and become one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
I love my Bible study. It's changed my life, and I really want to start in the ministry. In my town, everybody knows you and what you do. I'm not ashamed of the good news. But what if I become a witness? The family business has 2 employees, Dad and me.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Nelson. Did they leave yet?
Yeah, they actually just left.
Look, son, going to meetings is one thing, but if you're out there preaching, we'll both be out of work. Nelson! Nelson!
Can you see how Nelson's faith was being tested? He had to decide whether to be more concerned with what other humans thought of him or doing all that he could to secure Jehovah's approval. Is your faith being tested like Nelson's?
Nobody's faith is being tested like Nelson's. I mean, what were we just watching? Apparently, this is what's going through the minds of people who study with Jehovah's Witnesses.
I love my Bible study. It's changed my life, and I really want to start in the ministry.
Said no one studying with Jehovah's Witnesses ever. Even if you happen to be finding your Bible study rewarding, I'm sorry, this is just not a realistic thing that you would be thinking as someone studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I say this as someone who has been a Jehovah's Witness for many years and either conducted many Bible studies or attended many Bible studies. You never encounter people who say, oh, this Bible study has changed my life. Or, when do I get to go out preaching? I just cannot wait to go bothering people on their doorsteps and telling them to change their religion to mine. So like most dramatizations, I'm afraid this is completely unrealistic. And it seems to be setting this narrative that, again, the world is out to get Jehovah's Witnesses. Everyone hates Jehovah's Witnesses. That was clearly the message when Nelson was looking out from his doorstep and seeing the disapproving looks of his neighbors, and even on the phone to his dad, who he's apparently in business with, his dad's telling him, oh, we'll lose our business if you become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Don't be silly. It's just not the world we live in. You do not lose your business in the 21st century just because you've decided to join some fringe religious movement. And in the rare case where that might happen, what do we then say about those who've lost their jobs because they've left Jehovah's Witnesses? Because maybe their boss or their manager happens to be a Jehovah's Witness and they don't want to be sharing the same workplace as someone who no longer shares their views and might try to share apostate views with them. So yes, I'm afraid this dramatization is laughably unrealistic. It's part of a talk by Robert Siranko, who we just saw. He's giving the symposium item, Imitate the Faithful, Not the Faithless, Jesus' Disciples, Not the Pharisees. And Robert Siranko, who is a helper to the writing committee, has more wisdom to share.
Jesus' disciples did not allow the religious leaders' pressure and threats to deter them. They knew their priorities and that situations would arise when a Christian cannot obey both men and Jehovah God. You see, human rulers forfeit their right to our obedience when they demand what Almighty God prohibits, or, as in this case, when they prohibit what God requires of us. Even if they ban our preaching work, we cannot stop carrying out our God-given assignment to preach the good news. So, at that very moment, the apostles set a precedent for all true Christians throughout the ages to obey God as ruler first.
I thought this was a really interesting soundbite for those interested in learning more about Jehovah's Witnesses and their problems with child safeguarding. This explains, in a nutshell, I believe, why there are so many problems and why Jehovah's Witness policies are so far adrift of what's expected in this day and age of institutions when it comes to protecting children. The majority of institutions will fall over themselves to not just observe the law, but be one or two steps ahead of the law because they realize their responsibility to protect children. But as far as Jehovah's Witnesses are concerned, they have a command from God in the form of the two-witness rule that's telling them if two people didn't witness this act of child abuse, it effectively didn't happen. Now, they can argue all they like that this is an ecclesiastical position and it has no bearing on whether crime gets reported to the authorities, but the stats don't lie. When the Australian Royal Commission investigated Jehovah's Witnesses, they got the records, they found there had been 1,006 cases of abuse stretching between 1950 and 2014, and not a single one had been reported to the authorities. The reason, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't think it happened if it wasn't witnessed by two people. If the elders don't think it happened from a judicial point of view, you can understand why the organization would be averse to reporting it to the authorities and getting involved in a police investigation that could end up bringing the organization into disrepute. In other words, they put the welfare of the organization ahead of the welfare of the child. And it's this thinking expressed by Robert Siranko that drives this whole philosophy.
You see, human rulers forfeit their right to our obedience when they demand what Almighty God prohibits, or, as in this case, when they prohibit what God requires of us.
In other words, it doesn't really matter what human rulers expect of an institution like Jehovah's Witnesses when it comes to child safeguarding practices. If Jehovah's Witnesses think they know better, if Jehovah's Witnesses believe they have a divine mandate to do it a certain way, then that's the way they're going to do it. And they're going to stick to that way in their minds as a matter of loyalty to God.
Let's watch the rest of the dramatization that we saw earlier. Nelson had just heard his dad tell him over the phone, going to meetings is one thing, but if you're out there preaching, we'll both be out of work. Let's see if Nelson will imitate the faith of Jesus' disciples.
Is Dad right? We'd be ruined if I became a witness? But what would happen if I don't? Rob and Nick live in the same town with the same pressures. But they preach and support their families. Their joy is real. Do I really want fear of man to stop me from becoming Jesus' disciple? John 3, verse 36 says, "The one who exercises faith in the Son has everlasting life." It's time to exercise my faith and let Jehovah do the rest.
Remember the question that Nelson asked himself? Do I really want fear of man to stop me from becoming Jesus' disciple?
Well, Robert, there was actually a different question that Nelson asked himself that he didn't actually answer that I was more interested in.
Is Dad right? We'd be ruined if I became a witness? But what would happen if I don't?
What would happen if I don't become a witness? He never actually answers that question. And it's just as well, because if he were to answer that question, if he were to, I don't know, picture the fireballs coming down and the ground opening up, or the building collapsing and him dying a grisly death at Armageddon, that would be yet another video that Jehovah's Witness parents would need to write in and complain about. But wouldn't that have at least been an honest answer to his question? Again, in the dramatization, he asks the question and then just immediately goes to a different train of thought about how great it is that Rob and Nick live in the same town and they're able to carry on preaching and still support their families. Let's be clear, no one is asking whether it's financially viable to become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. That is not the issue here. People are not thinking, yes, but I'll lose my job or I'll lose my business if I become one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Again, it's not impossible that that could happen. I don't know, it's conceivable at least. But realistically, in the 21st century, that is not going to be an issue unless you happen to live in, I don't know, a Muslim country where there are virtually no Jehovah's Witnesses to preach to you anyway. The main issue that should be off-putting to someone who's considering joining Jehovah's Witnesses is that it's a cult, is that when you become a Jehovah's Witness, you have your life micromanaged for you by an organization whose leaders meet every Wednesday at their lakeside compound in upstate New York. Leaders who care only about their power and authority and the prosperity of their organization. The leaders who don't really care about you and what your interests are, to the extent where your life is of secondary value to the religion. You will need to lay down your life if, for example, a blood transfusion is the only option. And that's before we even get into shunning and the failed predictions and the cover-up of abuse. There are any number of reasons why no one should be joining Jehovah's Witnesses. Losing your job or losing your business is simply not one of them.
What is it that stops us from doing something that displeases Jehovah? It's our fear of Jehovah. So just as you need to maintain the brakes in a vehicle, we also need to make sure that our love for Jehovah and our fear of Jehovah is strong and well maintained. Now, of course, we need to think, what do we mean by fear of Jehovah? Do we mean shaking all the time, worried that he's going to do something wrong to us? No. Perhaps we could liken it to a chef who has a razor-sharp knife. Now, this knife, when used properly, can help him to attain all sorts of wonderful things. But if he misuses it, then he has a problem. So in a similar way, if our relationship is strong with Jehovah, there's no need for us to be shaking in our boots, as it were. But rather, we need to remember always that Jehovah is with us. And so a healthy fear of Jehovah means that we don't want to displease him in any way. So a fear of Jehovah helps us so that as we're moving along, if anything comes our way, we're ready to stop if we shouldn't engage in that activity.
We're watching governing body member Jeffrey Jackson, who is giving the final talk on the Friday of the 2021 Powerful by Faith Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. The title of his talk is Keep Testing Whether You Are in the Faith. How? To be honest, it's quite a long talk, and there isn't much of interest in it, at least to me. Most of what he's talking about in this talk is bog standard stuff. He's talking about the need for faith, and he's likening maintaining one's faith to maintaining a vehicle, maintaining a car. And he's going through the various parts of a car and likening each of those parts to an element of your faith. In this case, he's likening the brakes of the vehicle to godly fear, fear of Jehovah. And I found this part interesting because what we're basically describing here is a toxic relationship, is fear of a narcissist who is controlling you. And Jeffrey Jackson almost seems to acknowledge how messed up this whole situation is when he says,
now, of course, we need to think, what do we mean by fear of Jehovah? Do we mean shaking all the time, worried that he's going to do something wrong to us? No. Perhaps we could liken it to a chef who has a razor-sharp knife. Now, this knife, when used properly, can help him to attain all sorts of wonderful things. But if he misuses it, then he has a problem.
What kind of problem are we talking about here, Jeffrey? Are we talking about missing a finger? Are we talking about the chef going on the rampage and stabbing random people in the kitchen? I mean, I get the analogy. He's not suggesting that Jehovah is the one wielding the knife. He's likening godly fear to the caution one would exercise when using a chef's knife in the kitchen. It's a tremendously useful tool that can make all sorts of delicious things, but used incorrectly, there can be problems. Even so, there's no disguising the fact that this all amounts to a threat, doesn't it? Do as I say, or there are going to be problems. In other words, you're going to die at Armageddon. And let's be clear, this whole messed up way of thinking isn't exclusive to Jehovah's Witnesses. This, for me, is a problem with Christianity in general. Christianity in general says, you're flawed, you're sinful, you're doomed. The only way for you to correct that problem and escape either hell or eternal destruction, or destruction at Armageddon in the case of Jehovah's Witnesses, is to set aside your powers of reason, set aside your need for evidence, which you exercise in every other area of your life, and just give yourself over to this belief system as defined for you by other human beings. Faith and unquestioning credulity is one thing, but can you really call it a loving, healthy relationship when the object of your love is saying to you, worship me, love me, obey me, or I'll kill you?
Well, we know that Satan and his world constantly throw things at us, temptations, wrong thinking, and so on. So it's just like you're driving in a vehicle and someone jumps out in front of you or an animal runs across the road. That's when we need those brakes. But how do we apply them? How does our godly fear help us? Well, let's turn to the book of 2 Corinthians and see a very interesting point that is mentioned to the brothers back there in Corinth. So 2 Corinthians chapter 10, and we're going to look at verse 5. Now, the context of this chapter is where Paul is talking about wrong teachings. But the principle, as outlined in this verse, can be applied also to our reaction to wrong thoughts and immoral thoughts, or all sorts of things that are not in harmony with Jehovah's will. So let's see if we can see what the principle is. 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5. For we are overturning reasonings and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. And we are bringing every thought into captivity to make it obedient to the Christ. So do we see the point? No matter what sort of thought it is, if it's an immoral thought, a temptation to do something wrong, something that's not neutral with regard to the political situation, what does it say here? We have to react quickly. It's just as if we put on the brakes. Yes, we have to overturn all these sort of things that could be going on in our mind.
So, Jeffrey Jackson is here using the concluding talk on the Friday of the 2021 convention to warn Jehovah's Witnesses against, among other things, wrong thinking.
Well, we know that Satan and his world constantly throw things at us, temptations, wrong thinking, and so on.
Yes, if you've never been one of Jehovah's Witnesses, you probably didn't know this, but when you're a witness, it turns out it's possible to have wrong thoughts, or in other words, be guilty of thought crime.
No matter what sort of thought it is, if it's an immoral thought, a temptation to do something wrong, something that's not neutral with regard to the political situation, what does it say here? We have to react quickly. It's just as if we put on the brakes. Yes, we have to overturn all these sort of things that could be going on in our mind.
It's something you never really think about when you're a witness, but when you're on the outside and you have the chance to look back on your time as a follower of people like Jeffrey Jackson, you realize how absurd it is that you can have such a thing as wrong thinking. How can your very thoughts be wrong? How can you control or be held accountable for basically what amounts to electrochemical signals firing away in your brain, which you don't really have any control over? Your brain will do its own thing, but all it takes is for a certain combination of electrochemical reactions and you've committed a sin. You've done something wrong. You're guilty of wrong thinking. And in the case of Jehovah's Witnesses, this wrong thinking can manifest itself in, for example, doubting the religion, doubting the authority of people like Jeffrey Jackson. And Jackson's solution is to invoke 2 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 5, where it talks about overturning reasonings and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. How do you overturn reasonings? How do you overturn arguments against your faith, against your cherished beliefs, by ignoring them, by pretending they're not there, by resorting to denialism? This would be my question to any Jehovah's Witnesses who happen to be watching this video. First of all, how can thought crime be a thing? How can you be guilty of doing something wrong just because of the thoughts that are going on in your brain? And second of all, how can you reasonably be expected to overturn arguments against your faith without confronting them, without finding out what they are and deciding for yourself whether these arguments against your faith make logical sense?
We need to keep testing. Yes, we need to keep proving that we are in the faith. In other words, keep checking that we really are Christians, that we are really living up to what we believe and what we teach others to do. But remember, what is it that can be a problem for us? Well, again, if we turn to the book of Corinthians, this time 1 Corinthians, chapter 10 and verse 12, we'll see what the problem can be. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 12. Let the one who thinks he is standing beware that he does not fall. Yes, just thinking everything is okay, there's no problems, thinking that we're just going on fine without testing ourselves and proving that we're in the truth, that can be a problem. Just like lack of maintenance to a vehicle can result in not only damage with regard to the vehicle, but also loss of life. How important then it is that we continue to keep testing whether or not we are in the faith or in the truth.
Well, it's taken combing through more than 6 hours of footage so far in this convention. We're now at the end of the Friday of the convention, this being a 3-day convention. It's taken 6 hours of footage, but I finally have something in this convention, the 2021 Powerful by Faith convention, that I agree with. Jeffrey Jackson has said something here that makes total sense. Jehovah's Witnesses should absolutely keep testing whether they are in the true faith.
Yes, we need to keep proving that we are in the faith. In other words, keep checking that we really are Christians. How important then it is that we continue to keep testing whether or not we are in the faith or in the truth.
Again, similar to what I said about overturning reasonings, how are Jehovah's Witnesses supposed to do this practically without truly testing whether their beliefs stand up to scrutiny, without having full access to all of the older publications, and without reviewing these publications, including eyes-only publications that only the elders are allowed to read? How are Jehovah's Witnesses supposed to find out whether theirs is the one true religion without fully and comprehensively analysing their beliefs, including listening to what the other side has to say, listening to what apostates and former members have to say? How can you possibly be able to convince yourself that yours is the truth if you bury your head in the sand whenever anyone criticizes Jeffrey Jackson, whenever anyone criticizes the organization and its handling of abuse and its teachings regarding shunning and its teachings regarding domestic violence and its teachings regarding blood? If all you ever do is bury your head in the sand or listen to one side of the argument, how is this a proper test? Can you imagine if scientists operated in this way? Can you imagine if they didn't use the scientific method of experimentation, of questioning their hypotheses, if they just came up with a theory and just asserted it as fact and wouldn't allow anyone to say anything different, wouldn't allow any kind of experimentation to find out whether their theories really stood up to scrutiny? There would be no scientific progress. That's the sort of backwards, regressive attitude that people like Jeffrey Jackson and his colleagues stand for. He may pay lip service to testing whether you're in the faith, but we all know that if this test of whether you're in the faith turns out being negative, in other words, you find out you're not in the faith, you're not in the truth, things will very quickly deteriorate for you. This is an organization that goes out of its way to punish people who come to the conclusion that they are not in the truth and decide to do something about it. So I was incredibly perplexed that Jeffrey Jackson included this language towards the end of his talk. Yes, I agree with it. I just find it incredibly hypocritical, because it's one thing saying, keep testing whether you're in the faith, keep testing whether you're in the truth. But again, when you're actively punishing people who do that, who follow this advice, and decide that it's not the truth, that makes you a two-faced hypocrite. Anyway, that brings me to the end, not just of the Friday afternoon, but the Friday, the first day of the Powerful by Faith 2021 Convention of Jehovah's Witnesses. I will also be sharing my thoughts on the Saturday and Sunday of the convention, so look out for those rebuttals in the coming weeks. But that's all I have time for in this particular video. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lloyd Evans channel for more such videos, and as always, thank you for watching.